All right, well, welcome everyone. Today is November 28th, 2023. It is 18:02 or 6:02, and we're going to call the Windham Elementary School Board meeting to order. So first off, we are going to start with public comment, and it looks as though we have quite a crew of people on Zoom. Nope, there's nobody here in the building other than Bob, Rory, and myself.
It's crummy out.
It is crummy out. So is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Okay, not seeing anything. We can move along to changes to the agenda. Are there any changes anyone would like to add or move around or?
One person.
Hi. All right, so not hearing any changes to the agenda, we can move along to correspondence. I feel like we've had a lot of correspondence. I'm just not sure. Bob, do you have anything in particular in correspondence that?
No, you guys have all received the same correspondence as far as I know.
Okay. Anything that you can think of that?
I don't think I got anything different.
Daniel?
No, I think we all have the same thoughts on it.
So.
Question in the audience.
Okay, Russ, I see your hand is raised. Russ coming? Unless that's Joyce.
No, it's Russ. Thank you. I understand that a number of letters have been sent to the school board by a number of different parents, and I'm wondering why it's not being addressed under the correspondence. They have been letters that have been correspondence that have been addressed specifically to the school board.
Can you be more specific for my notes here?
Yeah, I know. I've spoken with a couple of parents that told me that they had sent letters to the school board asking for tuition, and there are several of them, not just one. And I'm wondering why it was not included on the agenda. It's normally the policy of the school board, if they get correspondence, to acknowledge it and to address it in the meeting. And I'm wondering why you're not doing so.
Would that go under correspondence? Or is that what you're saying? Because we're still in correspondence, so.
It's under correspondence. They sent you letters addressed to the school board. They've sent them an email, and they've also sent them written, written correspondence, but neither one of you seem to want to respond to their requests, and I'm wondering why. It's very much against Robert's Rules of Orders.
Are you talking about responding the emails?
Addressing it on the correspondence.
They addressed it to you, Abby, directly.
As correspondence.
As correspondence.
Directly to
There are more than one people have done that, and I'm wondering why you are ignoring it.
Well, I think depending on the specific requests, there have been requests that have put through that have been addressed. I'm not sure, Bob, since we're all in the same line of the communication here, is there anything that you feel that we are missing here that?
I think what Russ might be referring to isn't so much responding to the emails that are the correspondence, but addressing what the correspondence is in the meeting.
During
So
correspondence.
yeah, oftentimes boards will read the correspondence aloud. Often they will enter it into the record. They'll do something to acknowledge the receipt of the correspondence from the public. Russ, is that what you're getting at?
Yes, I mean, the board, if they've received an email or a letter or something in correspondence, they need to recognize it and make it part of the minutes of the meeting and what the subject is of the request.
At least acknowledge it.
At least acknowledge it. I mean, to ignore it and thinking it'll go away, it's not going to go away.
Well, we're in correspondence, so we didn't finish.
Anonymous, right? Maybe the correspondence is anonymous and that it's not a public affair. So why are you questioning the situation?
I'm questioning the situation because this is a public meeting. People have sent letters to the chair of the school board requesting specific action, and it's not being acknowledged as having been received, and the subject of it is not being discussed, which is against Robert's Rules of Orders. And I'm wondering why the chair of the school board is deciding to do this.
So I'm not sure, as far as correspondence that was written directly to me, I am not aware of correspondence that was sent to me directly as the chair. I know that correspondence was received to the board, and I guess, Bob, could you help us out here with how that we can move forward with that?
I mean, I think I printed these off. These were 4 different emails that
Can
I
I
think I
interrupt
received.
really quick? It's about a Zoom.
I was getting a message that it was locked.
Oh, the
and I think I
link.
just fixed it. You have to tell the person to try again. When I was closing the chat, I made a mistake and pushed the wrong button. So I think it should be fixed now. I pushed lock meeting. I don't know. I didn't know what that was.
Yes, it said it was locked and
Yeah.
people couldn't get in.
So yeah, have them try again. That should be fine now. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, these are the 4 correspondences that I printed out.
Oh, wow.
So there's, I don't know if you have the same ones I do, but that I think typically what boards do is they acknowledge receiving the correspondence. Often they'll, if it depending on what the correspondence is, they may read it into the record. They may not. They may address it. They may say we've received it. It's on the agenda. We received it. It'll be on another agenda. It'll be. It depends. I mean, boards do it a little bit differently, but I think Russ is correct in that you have to acknowledge the receipt
Okay.
in some manner. And,
We've done that before. I think that maybe it was just a little premature to say that we didn't because we're still in correspondence. That's all.
Yeah.
We've got them. So with that,
So you do have another hand up that's new.
Yes, Emily Goyette?
Emily's muted.
oh, Emily, you might need to.
Hi, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, so I sent the board and Bob my tuition request, and I specifically asked for it to be addressed tonight at the meeting. And I never got a response from anyone. And the only response I got from Bob said that he was away at a meeting. And then I asked to please acknowledge that it was received. So I know you all got it because I've sent you stuff before. So I'm wondering what's going on here too, because, you know, when Beth was board chair, she'd even ask during correspondence if we want things read.
That's
And
a
you
good
guys seem to-
question to ask.
And you guys seem to be just ignoring the correspondence.
Well, I
And
think
I
there's
also know there's a number of parents that sent in tuition requests. So, I mean, you can't ignore that.
Okay, so should we, under correspondence, I don't have that correspondence in front of me, so I don't know, Bob, if you,
November 2nd.
Here's the ones that I printed.
Yeah.
out. They may be
I
others,
have
but
it.
that's what I have.
I think in normal, in the past days, there would be written under correspondence and then tuition requests. And
yeah,
then most of the, or 99% of the time, there would be a response from somebody on the board saying we received your request and we will act, you know, especially asking for it to be put on this agenda, be responded to. Bob responded to mine. No one else responded to anybody else as far as I'm understanding from Emily.
Actually, I think
And-
Emily, you might be the only one that we didn't respond to, and I'm sorry. That we
No,
that we
you did.
received.
No, you also didn't respond to my sister's.
I don't
She
know.
sent hers approximately the same day.
so, and I guess there's, with maybe some of the confusion might have been, Bob, with a request that was made and then another request that's made, and how that is handled. Is it every individual time somebody makes a request that you take a look at that, or is it something that,
Yeah, so the tuition request piece is something that because the board had heard tuition requests before, denied them in public, or failed to didn't act on them, I guess is maybe a better response, right? I don't know if they denied them openly or not, I don't remember. And so it could, I mean, it sounds, I mean, the board, if the board can put it on their agenda, the board can choose to not act on them. But I think as far as receiving correspondence, to say we've received these as correspondence, the board can discuss whether or not they choose to act on it.
Should people specify if they do or do not want it publicly under correspondence?
I think,
Or do we
I
just
mean, you could
assume?
ask, it sounds like what Beth used to do is ask if they want it read. Is that what you said? Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't here for those days, so I don't know how it was traditionally handled. I do know that in other boards, that the board chair will often read it or even summarize it if it's long to give like what the intent is. If it's something that's specifically, if there's action that's part of it, you can adjust your agenda to put it on the agenda. If there's not action, it's just informational, then you obviously wouldn't have to do anything with it.
So what we can do is, I mean, we
So
can.
can't we just do it now for correspondence?
Well, we would still have to have a discussion, and would that require an executive session like we did previously?
I mean, I think it depends on what the
Can't it just
request
be
is about.
acknowledged under correspondence now, since this is where we are?
Yeah, I think the board could discuss if they want to add tuition requests to the agenda under new business, because you're still at the beginning of the meeting. You can still change the agenda if you choose to do that. You could choose to table it till a future meeting. Or you could choose to just say, we've received your notes, thank you. So you have a variety of options to choose from there.
Okay.
Just point of order. Correspondence, there's no discussion that's allowed on correspondence. If the board chooses to have a conversation about correspondence, it needs to happen at a warrant meeting.
Thank you for pointing that out, Michael Pelton. So what I can say is we received,
I'm gonna raise my hand here and be very vocal about this because I asked for this to be added to this meeting. I specifically asked to have had my tuition request added to this meeting. And there was no response, so this should be added to this meeting for everyone.
oh, okay. So we received tuition from 4 people, or 4 tuition requests from 4 people. So would we like to add to the agenda under new business the tuition?
And
That's for-
just to be clear, these are re-requests, right? Previous requests that resulted in no action, but they are requested again. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So they have been addressed prior, but it's a case where we have another acknowledgement, and we did acknowledge via email. Emily, I'm sorry if we missed acknowledging, via email that we have, your correspondence.
So everyone did receive it then.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
I can speak for myself.
And so I asked for it to be added to the agenda also at the bottom of my letter. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we're all looking for an answer today.
Understood. So Daniel and Rory, what are your thoughts with, do we add this to the agenda, and how you want to move forward with that?
Yeah, they should be acknowledged, and however it needs to be added should be added.
So under new business, we can add, so Daniel, if you got that, if you want to add the tuition requests.
Sure. After policies to be warned.
What are people's thoughts on, yes, I guess that would be fine. I mean, do you object to that, Rory?
What?
If that is put before the policies to be, or after policies to be warned, is that what you said, Daniel? To new
Yeah.
business?
Sure. Works for me.
Okay. All right, is there anything else other than making sure we get the acknowledgements heard for those individuals? We got,
I would like the board to acknowledge that they have received tuition requests in X number of requests from families for tuition, and I'd like it to be included in the next meeting, a discussion of it. But I'd like the board to acknowledge that they have received, even though it's a re-request, additional requests for tuition.
Thank you, Russ. So we have Bridget Blanchard and I guess it's Bridget Corby. Hands up.
And just to be clear,
And Emily?
Crystal.
Claire.
Crystal's not gonna up the line, I think. But maybe everybody else did too.
All right. Well, Crystal, we haven't heard from you, so go ahead. I can't really see.
I also sent a tuition request and got no response. So I would like it acknowledged that you received it.
Thank you, Crystal.
We actually don't have, I can print it for Crystal.
Bridget Corby?
Thank you. So just a couple things. I think that I'm struggling with the board communication and the responses. I'm not sure how we should word an email so that it can be handled in a board meeting, but it's taken multiple emails to you guys to get someone to respond, between myself and my husband of, can I get a response? Can I get a response? And now we're here. You guys are saying that you had responded. Daniel, you referenced them being old requests that were dealt with before or re-requests. This was a new request that I put in based on the termination of the principal. So I just think understanding what you guys are looking at, and to be honest with you, it feels very much like the three of you, I shouldn't say the three of you, it very much feels like we're being brushed off. And when we're in a situation like this, that's very uncomfortable. I'm not expecting you guys to answer my request in an email, but I had to ask for an acknowledgement of the email and whether or not this would be addressed. And then Dan, the past couple of days, sent my husband Dan, a few different emails before Dan Roth responded. So there's a communication breakdown between the board and the public and how we have things addressed in a public setting. So I'm hoping that you guys can clean that up a little bit so that with the concerns that we have, they're actually being heard and addressed. And again, this is not an old request I forwarded my original request from over the summer to make a point that everything I was concerned about happened. This was a new request based off of the current situation the school is in.
Thank you, Bridget.
yeah, Bridget, I appreciate that distinction.
And I see Bridget Blanchard and Crystal, you still have hands up. Is that from before, or do you have something else to add?
I would like to know that you also have my tuition request there because you're saying you have 4 and I sent mine as well and nobody's acknowledged that my request is sitting there.
Oh, Crystal, yours is in my personal email. So I don't know if anybody else had an email thing with that. Nope, looks like it's just me.
Was hers in the pile I gave you? Or
No.
But I do have it.
yeah.
So there's 5. So Crystal, we'll make sure you're in there, okay? And Bridget Blanchard, is your hand still up or did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I had sent a request on November 2nd and I didn't get a response. So I sent another email up on the 15th saying, please add the answer to this request to next meeting's agenda. So who brought the tuition request to the meeting tonight?
Bob,
I did.
the printed.
Bob did. Okay. But so are you guys just not getting our emails for the tuition requests?
So I think it's a matter of there may have been confusion, and I completely am not trying to say Bridget's request is is a new request. It's not a new request. I'm not debating whether it is or it isn't, but that the answers, the responses previously versus the requests coming in again, that might have been confusing for folks as far as what the appropriate response was. But we are here today. That's been added to the agenda, and we'll make sure that you folks get your stuff answered.
So far,
Can
everybody.
you just say the names of the families on those so we know that
When
you
we-
in fact got them all?
Yep, we will, when we get to that point, we're gonna keep moving because we have a lot of stuff that is on here. So, yes, so that will be acknowledged when we get to that
So far,
piece.
everybody that has asked, we do have. So if there's anybody out there that has submitted something and has not mentioned it today or doesn't want it read, then we don't know about it.
Okay.
So everybody that's mentioned it today, we do have.
Okay. So
Sorry to
moving,
interrupt. Can I
Yeah.
just pause for 1 second? My camera is doing the weirdest thing. I just need to reset it. I apologize.
no, that's fine.
I have that effect.
It's just not responding.
Is this the same one you had in Windham?
This is a different issue. It's
Different
zooming
issue,
in and
same
out.
camera,
It's
though,
not
isn't it?
responding. I
Yeah.
can't even turn it off.
Yeah, there's your case.
We can see everything, no problem, on the camera, if that.
All right, I think we should be good to go. I apologize.
No problem.
All right, so moving on to old business, approving the minutes from 10/24/23 and 11/1/23. I make a motion to approve the minutes for 10/24/23 and 11/1/23. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, Rory second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, minutes are approved. Moving on to approve financials. So this is the stuff that was, do we have Lori? Is Lori on today?
I did see
Is
her.
this related to budget?
Yeah, usually you guys have this, but it's 29,251.47, and it is pay order number 14.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve pay order number 14. Can I get a second?
Do we have that pay order, Lori?
29,251.47 is the total.
Do we have like the actual pay order?
You did it all. You approved it all through Doc Hub.
Okay, perfect.
And I didn't, Lori. I just wanted to make sure that we passed everything before I signed anything. So, and I don't know if we've kind of made some changes, and I didn't know if that worked.
Nope. You should sign it when you get it.
Okay, so even though we have it brought forward into the meeting, then I should still sign it?
If you approve of it, you look through it and everything looks okay, you can sign it, and then the board is just affirming that. But you're looking through it and approving it when you're on Doc Hub.
Gotcha. Okay, so once that's gone through and approved, I will make sure I get that signed right away, Lori.
Okay, great.
So Russ, I see your hand up.
It's a point of order. If you're having pay orders and you have 3 people on the board, the 3 of them need to have read and looked at the pay order before they can approve it. If you have a pay order that comes before you and you haven't seen what the pay order is, you can't approve it. You can't vote to approve it. So all of the board members need to be able to look at the pay orders that are submitted from the Windham Central Supervisory Union, go through them, and either ask questions or whatever, and then you can approve it. But if you haven't seen it, you're not in a position to approve it. Thank you.
That's correct. So just to touch on that, Russ, all that information does get sent. It does get reviewed, and then each person can individually sign. And I just wasn't sure if by signing it prior to the meeting, if that would be problematic. So that's what Lori just clarified. So it is provided and the documents are reviewed. So
Why is Dan asking about it if he has already seen it? Because he said he hadn't seen it. So how can he vote to approve it if he hasn't seen it?
But he did see it. He must have.
He must have misspoke. I see.
No, it was that he has signed it, and therefore he had reviewed it because it makes you walk through the process to sign it. So So that is, what was the number or pay order number again? Or did I already make that motion? Am I waiting
Pay
on
order
a
number 14.
pay order number 14? Did I get a second?
Yeah, I signed it.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving that, say aye. Aye.
Oh wait, Daniel, did you see it?
Yes, he signed it.
Okay. Sorry, aye.
Okay. So I will get that signed, Lori, so you'll have all those signatures from everybody, and going forward, that will make a lot more sense. So thank you for explaining that. Moving on to new business. So we have principal report.
That's just there as a placeholder. Obviously, we don't have a report.
Okay. And then superintendent report.
So I sent that
Can
out
we clarify for this meeting why we don't have a report?
because we don't have a principal.
Thank you.
We have a designated principal who's Jen McCusick from the central office, but obviously she has another full-time job as well. So she did not issue a report for this month because.
And she's only here 2 days a week, maybe?
I mean, and not full days either.
No. 2 half days a week.
Partial days, yep. Yep. The superintendent report is the cabinet report, which I sent out at the beginning of each month to all board members. And a couple things to highlight. It took a little while, but I did eventually get the slideshow from Pietro from the October 25th retreat training on open meeting law. So I've sent that out to all board members in the SU, as well as the whatever updates that they have. And they have the VSBA website has a ton of videos archived for trainings as well, which are worth checking out. And if you haven't logged on to there, you do have to create an account because it's a locked website for some of the stuff. So
And then they have to approve your account.
you have to approve your account. You have to use your official Windham Central Board email to do it. And then they check their list against what we've told them, and then they will grant you access. So it doesn't take long, but so that's.
I think we all have accounts.
What's that?
I think we all have accounts.
You do, okay. So so you're good. So that's all I have. That's anything new outside of what that report was, but there'll be a new report coming out for December very shortly. So because it's so late in the month, it's kind of old now. Old news.
Oh, I see a hand from Michael Pelton. Excuse me. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi. I was wondering if you might touch briefly on the pretty positive meeting that we had with families regarding, a bunch of different stuff, but mainly focus on the curriculum implementation and so on.
We can do that. The staffing update, which is also on the agenda, however you guys want to do that, whatever your pleasure is.
Might as well keep it with the staffing update if that's when you're planning to do that. So, does that work for you, Michael? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. So, first draft of budget. So there, Lori, you're up. Welcome back.
So you should all have a copy of the budget in front of you. I can share my screen if I am given the capability to do so.
One moment.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so 1 second, here we go. All right, so can everybody see the PDF? Let's see if I can make it bigger here. There, how's that? Everybody can see that PDF?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So to start off with, I didn't have a lot of direction from the board just because of the circumstances. I know that a lot of things were talked about. I know that a survey was going to be done. I don't think that ever was completed. So I had to make some assumptions. I had to, listen to what I heard in some of the board meetings and put it into the budget. So I'm going to start off with revenues at the top of the screen there. Revenues are pretty much the same except for one major revenue change, and that is the small schools grant. So Windham will no longer receive the small schools grant because of Act 127 and the new weights. So I want to make that clear that is a loss of revenue. So already with that loss of revenue, your ed spending number, it was going to be up anyway. So that's first thing out of the gate. And then going down through the, whoops, I've got revenues in both places. I need to change that. I copied and pasted and didn't change it. Let's look at our expenses. So I wasn't able to get any really good information on pre-K students that are out there going to private schools. You know, you pay the 10 hours per week. So I think that I just basically used last year's numbers, which is about 3 students. Could be you have more out there, but we weren't able to get any information on them. So if you all have some, that would be great. Glory did try to get as much as she could. The ECSE, which stands for Early Childhood Special Education, that's an assessment that comes through from the SU. That is in there as well. So that's some of your special education costs for your pre-kindergarten. It's also shared now among all the districts as well. And then heading into elementary, so the assumptions that I used were basically historical. You had a teacher and then a teaching principal. So that is what this budget is built on at the moment. And you'll see that there's an increase there, and that's basically just because of, you know, what we budgeted in fiscal year 25, what the actual that is happening or was happening in 24. So that's where that extra $16,000 is coming from, just sort of truing up to what was actually happening and right now currently. Just going down through, the only other really large increase you'll see under books and periodicals. This is for curriculum. This is based on the curriculum that Jen McCusick has recommended. She's recommended curriculum for this year, which I've not given the go-ahead to purchase yet until you know, we get through this board meeting. And then also curriculum for next year as well. So that's an increase, $4,100 increase, or 820%. So
Lori?
Yes.
Can I ask a question on line for account number 5281 for dental?
Yes, so that was my error. Windham does not offer dental. They can't because they're too small. So that was, I had budgeted for dental. And so because it was told to the person that they would receive it, we did honor it for that year. So
okay, so 0 is the right number versus the you know, $1,100, $1,200.
Yes, that is the right number.
Budget.
Yeah, Windham just isn't large enough to create a group to be able to offer dental.
Okay, and that wasn't offered years before, which I thought it was.
It wasn't actually. If it was an error. We double checked it to make sure that they couldn't, but it was, I believe it was an error last year. So we did honor it though for the person because they were told they were getting it.
Lori, I have a question too.
Okay.
In the beginning of all this, you said that there was a survey that was sent out, but it wasn't filled out. And I was wondering if that survey was sent to the parents or who was supposed to fill that survey out?
No, I don't believe the survey ever was sent, and Rory can speak to this better than I can.
It was created but not sent because we lost our teaching principal that was supposed to be helping to move forward with that. And given that we don't really know what the status of the school is going to be, it's been tabled for a little bit until it's the right time to get that information, I guess. More pressing matters, I think, have kind of been introduced. It's still there though. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity.
All right, are you all set, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Rory. I appreciate that. Because I was just asking because there was some back and forth communication with Glory for a bit about a different survey that was supposed to be sent to family. And like, it took me forever to get the actual link for the actual survey. And then by that time I was over it and I never actually filled it out. And I just didn't know if it was the same survey or a different survey.
So,
No, that's a different survey. That was the panorama family survey that the SU is doing around culture and climate, and that was sent out. The link was not sent out when it was supposed to be, and the window closed. We had to reopen the window.
Did it get reopened? Because I failed on that too.
And then, it got reopened. I think when Glory sent it out the second time, maybe, and that's what she's referencing. And some people did fill out more. We did get some survey results from that, but not. It's not about programs, which is what yours was
it's two
talking
different
about.
surveys, but that's still a good question.
Okay, I wasn't sure. And then Bob, on your point of it's a difference, or what I was referencing is that the first time all of that got sent out, it was just pretty much the back end information on how to create the survey. And I was going back and forth with Glory for a bit until I got the guy at the SU's email address directly to get the link directly. And then all of that is how I found out that Jenna hadn't been in school for a bunch of days already. And that's a whole other can. But anyways, I was just wondering about the survey and this survey, that survey, and I've done none. So that's right.
Appreciate your honesty.
Thank you, Sarah. Michael Pelton, you have a question for Lori?
Yeah, I'm noticing there's a tuition increase. It says 17.5 to 18.3, and I'm wondering if I'm assuming that's an SU increase, and I'm wondering if that's the state average or if that's something different.
No, Michael, that is the West River tuition. I'm just assuming that they will go up on their tuition rate as all schools do every year. So I just made that assumption. You'll only pay the announced tuition, but announced tuition isn't due until January 15th. So, that's just a normal increase, 4 or 5% is what we're seeing. But that was for West River.
Thanks.
Okay. So I don't see any more questions regarding that particular area, Lori, if you want to.
Hang on one second, I'm just gonna close the door here. People are coming home and the dog is getting excited. Okay. So music education, that was one that I know that we talked about in board meetings, that it's done with volunteers right now, but I think the comment was made that it would be nice to have it as a program. So I did add that in at a 0.10, which is a half a day a week.
question on music education?
Erin Kehoe?
So is that the I guess the music education number for the rest of the district?
It's just Windham.
I'm sorry, the rest of the supervisory union. All right, so what's
that's a 0.1 FTE for this building.
Okay,
I think it's similar to what the service currently is. Is that right, Lori?
Yeah, so I just use basically the salary and benefits of a music teacher in, we'll say, West River, and I said 10% of that is what.
Okay, so you're getting the number from the West River District music instructor.
Yeah, to serve as a placeholder
to serve as a placeholder.
Put this program into the budget rather than relying on.
Okay, so that's the 10% or 0.10.
Yeah, 10% of a full-time.
Of a full-time employee in the West River District.
Yep.
That's right. Mm-hmm. PE is, just the normal increase there. The special education or MTSS assessment, that's coming through. And so this is coming through Windham Central, and this is your special education and academic support, which is a shared cost among all of the districts. And as a side note, the Windham Central budget was approved on November 15th by unanimous vote. I'm not sure that Windham was there, but it was approved. So these numbers are coming over from that budget. That budget for anybody in the public can be found on our website, windhamcentral.org, under budgets, and you can find those budgets there.
All right. So another question for special education, since you're on this line. So that's just the share that's shared between all of the schools within the supervisory union. Now, with that too, because there's unknowns, will that number be subject to change with those unknowns? Or is that now a set number?
So it's not a set number because we don't have our census data yet. So the way Windham Central splits the cost, it was basically a $7.8 million budget and at the MTSS. And the way they split it is by a 2-year average ADM. So we don't have those numbers yet. And when the board votes on a budget, they're voting for the total expenses. So they're saying it takes $7.8 million to run this program. You know, we vote yes, and then we split it up. So that number might change, but not significantly, right? So I know Windham's probably thinking, or you maybe should be thinking that, oh, you know, our numbers have gone down, right? So our assessment should come down. But also what's happening is all the other districts are also experiencing some amount of student loss. So really this number is not going to change that much. But once that we have that 2-year rolling, then it is set, right? So it doesn't change. It's an assessment. It doesn't change after that. If we go over budget in the SU, then it eats into the fund balance at the SU.
And that was voted on with all the other schools on November 15th?
Correct.
All right, but not Windham. Windham was not there.
Windham was there, but Windham didn't have a vote because I'm not in a voting seat.
Yeah, sorry, Rory, you were there.
I was there, but I don't count really.
You were online and heard everything. Yes. So the social worker or the social work line item, I just kept the same there. I know that there has been some talk about increasing that, but the provider couldn't increase. I didn't put an increase in here. There is still REAP money, which can be tapped if there is some, if for next year that can be increased. So I was looking to that to handle any increases.
This is for the counseling. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
The school nurse, again, that's just the, I take the number and divide it, you know, by the 0.10. Instructional staff training, that's the same. Library media is the other place that I added a line item because that was another thing that was talked about in one of your board meetings that would be nice to have is a librarian. I was talking to Dan today and I said, you know, probably we should, if we're going to have a librarian come up to the school, we should probably put in a line for books. So, you know, to purchase some new books. So I probably would recommend adding a line under that 2220 for some books. There
and I did see earlier in the document that there was books and periodicals or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't dovetail, or is that more on the curriculum side?
That was on the curriculum side, but you know, if not all of the curriculum is spent, then you could use some of that money for books as well.
So it could be across the
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Erin Kehoe.
So for the library and media services, which are currently not offered in Windham, which are supposed to be part of the curriculum, so we're talking to have the mandated curriculum from the state to add the library and media services to Windham is an average of a $10,000 cost. So that's what we're looking at, correct?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I took the average cost of a librarian basically use the same calculation for the music.
EQS, the Education Quality Standards, requires a librarian to be based on a prorated basis. If you have under a certain number of kids, I think it's 300, you can go part-time, and it's based on prorated amount of the kids. So yeah, this would be sort of the minimum, half day a week. But yeah, right now.
But that is technically required from the Agency of Education to have that.
Correct.
That in the curriculum. So that is a $10,000 add to the curriculum pretty much no matter what, because we haven't been offering it.
To be compliant, yep.
To be compliant. Thank you.
Not much changed in the Board of Education. The SU assessment obviously was up. Audit, I just, went up 4% there. I did increase legal to more of what you're spending in fiscal year 23. The principal's office, the 0.50 principal, and then part of the clerical is in here, and then part of it's in the food service, because that was the split as serving the food, as to why you have a 0.75 administrative assistant. But it does mean that you are paying a little bit less for the food program. So there's a little bit of an offset there. Michael has a question.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the Board of Ed section there. You said that there's not much changing, but it looks like there's a $9,000 change.
Yeah,
the
that's
SU assessments went up considerably. Communications went up a fair amount as well. I mean, are those controllables? What are those? What is that stuff there comprised of?
So I don't see communications going up at all. Insurance went up, which is typical of insurance going up, and it the
Maybe
SU
I'm looking at a different document, but I have the document I can see. I can't see the one on your screen there, but I've got other goes from let's see. No, it stays the same, even though it's technically it says 1,500 for 23 actual, 24 budget is 22,250, and then the proposed budget's the same. If you go to communications, it says actual 1,750, and then the budget for 24 and 25 says 3,750. Is that just because we haven't spent it yet, or is that
reading the budget.
Is 1,750 more likely what we actually spend? And then if you go down to line 5593, it says SU assessments. It goes from 22,000 to 32,000 and change.
Correct. Right. Yep, you've got all those numbers right. So the assessment did go up quite a bit. As I said, the WCSU board documents are all on the website if you want to take a look at those, Michael. A lot of the increase in the SU assessment has to do with our business office transition and the fact that we have we are basically
you've got the two people working the job, so the other person knows what they're doing, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, okay.
So
that clarifies it.
A lot of what the increase was, and also you'll see down in technology there was a fairly large increase there, and that was basically because of how the model was previous to how it is now. So there were some increases across the board from the SU. Communications, I basically flatlined that. I think this is something that has been talked about, but websites, that type of thing, having better access for the community, I think is probably what we were thinking last year, and maybe it didn't get spent. So I think that, certainly can be reduced, but I think there is a need for a more robust website and putting some money into communication. Anybody else have any other questions before I move on?
Don't see any hands up, Lori.
Okay, so as I said, technology is also up there. Operation of buildings, again, I'm trying to, when somebody's hourly, sometimes they work more one year and less the next year kind of thing. So it doesn't seem to be a consistent total there. But so I was just trying to bring it in line with what the fiscal year 23 actual was. Other than that, just really.
I guess I'm just being, for a forecasting budget for fiscal year, 23 for I guess we'll call it payroll services. Since, we didn't really have a teaching principal since, April vacation going forward, and there was no real substitute put in there, and the administrative assistant took over that role, and there was no substitute for that administrative assistant. Don't you think that number is low?
Where are you talking about?
So you were talking about, for operations of building, non-clerical generalists.
This is for the person that comes in and cleans the building.
Oh, sorry, then I misunderstood you.
The other, what you're speaking about, I think is taken care of in the administration and clerical above in principal's office.
Oh, I was on the wrong line.
Okay.
Yeah. But I guess that question still is there because there's a $4,000, so let's say a $4,000 difference for, April, May, June. So we'll call it 2.5 months, for salary benefits. Which is skewed on here from fiscal year 23 to 24 now. So wouldn't that number technically need to increase?
So what you're looking at here is 23's actual, and you're looking at 24's budget, approved budget. You're not seeing the 24 actual year to date. And we're going to talk about that when I'm done presenting this budget. I want to talk about where you're at right now with 24, what I see happening, potentially could happen. There's a lot of moving parts as to where you're going to come out for the remainder of the year. So can we get through this budget and then we'll talk about what's happening actually now?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's the profit and loss, right, for 24 that we'd be looking at, right?
Yes.
Like when we're looking at the difference between actual and budget. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so, just making some adjustments here as we go along. The internet services are a little higher. Telephone keeps creeping up. We're looking into your telephone, seeing if we can somehow get that cost down. It's, we have made contact with, I think it's Marty Grimes. You have, copper POTS lines into the school, and so Verizon is now charging an additional $100 per month per line. So we're trying to figure out how to get around that and reduce that cost because it's outrageous for a little school to be paying that much for phone.
Is there another service that could be provided, like AT&T or? Side curiosity.
Have you lived in Vermont long?
Yeah, unfortunately, Verizon is kind of the one-stop shop. They do provide the internet, and we are in a contract with them for the internet services because Windham also qualifies for E-rate discounts through USAC. I can't remember what USAC stands for, but E-rate is a federal discount program for schools and libraries.
Okay, thank you.
Transportation, again, just bringing that in line with what I was seeing for actuals. Gas, I went up a little bit, but really the gas prices or diesel are, not as bad as they were. Really spent $4,700 there. So food service. So I moved, it's a little bit awkward because I moved a little bit of things around here. So The travel, so you are not paying for the mileage for the mileage to get the food to you. That is included in your contract. Okay, so where it wasn't previously. So that was part of the increase in that contract. The 5591, the purchase service from Public Vermont LEA, that is 2655. So really, you could take that 24 for fiscal year 24 and move part of that down to that fund transfer out. So that is the services from the SU that provide all of your compliance for the compliance, the paperwork, all of that for your child nutrition program. The 16,000 is what it's costing the taxpayers to feed the students of Windham. Okay, so that's being transferred over to the food budget to reconcile that budget over there. And we'll get to the food budget in a second. This is the last year of your promissory note in 25, so that's exciting. So that's the last payment on that. That was the lighting retrofitting that was done 7 years ago now. And then this is where we'll probably have to spend some time talking about this. So, one of the things that was discussed heavily was the flooring in the school, and that we couldn't move forward with doing any type of floor replacement until asbestos was taken care of. There really should be a capital fund. There is a bus fund that's being funded. So $10,000 of that 55,000 is still to go into the bus. And then the other is for basically getting you on a schedule to take care of the floors. I think that there are three rooms that need asbestos abatement. So that's where that large number comes from there. And when we get to the capital plan, we can talk about that a little bit more in detail, because that's obviously pushing up your budget quite a bit, right? $55,000. I'm not sure that you want to pull it out, and we'll talk about different ways that we can keep it in. So right now you're looking at a 26.26% increase with the additional services that we put in, the music, the library, just adjusting for the budget, and then this $55,000 increase here, which is actually 45,000 increase over last year. So I'm going to keep going so that we can get through this, but this is the food service budget. So you can see that the transfer in from the general fund, and then you can see all of these things that say subgrant in your revenues. These are coming through. This is the child nutrition program payments, both in state and federal payments. And then so we have some amount of clerical here that is serving the food, and then the cost of the food from West River, which I did confirm that would only be a 4% increase this coming year. So that's where we're at right now with the food budget.
Looks like Michael Pelton has his hand raised.
Yeah, Lori, you said the $10,000 is the serving of the food, and
right.
I'm wondering does that mean that that is additional money that the admin assistant is getting, or is there somebody from the SU that's going to be brought up, or how does that work?
No, that is the admin assistant is serving the food.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So then we worked at putting together some annual building operations, some of the things that go into that line item that's in the building operations. I'm going to scroll really quick back up just to kind of point it out to you. With Act 72, you are required to have a 5-year capital plan. And so, sorry, I went by it. Apologize. So in this non-technology repair and maintenance, this 5431 here, 13,340, you know, what is that made up of? Right. So that's what we were trying to basically, it's a little off there, but that's what we were trying to come up with, is what do we pay out yearly for those types of things. And then of course you always have a miscellaneous for some annual repairs. And then just going out 10 years with these different things, this is, you know, just adding a 4% increase to that each year. And then we started to build, and Greg, you know, has said this needs to be talked about. I think that he and Dan tried to meet. I don't know that it ever worked out. I'm not sure, but I think things need to be added to this list. But this is what we had here, you know, just looking at it and saying, okay, what do we need to do to be able to maintain a capital fund? Now, I say this because I say this with the assumption that the voters, you will put an article on your ballot that says that you want to establish a building fund, a capital building fund. And also another article that you would want to put, what I would suggest putting on your ballot is that if there is any surplus, that surplus is moved into the building fund at the end of the year, the audited surplus. So this is saying that, you know, in 25, you're not going to do the floors, but you're going to save some money to do the floors, right? So that you can keep, you know, a positive balance. And, you know, we put things out. Greg's got your useful life here. So this is what we have been working on. Looking at, I did ask Cord what he thought about the bus. How far out should we go? And, you know, he says the bus is in really good shape. It needs some, you know, care, as it always does, has a little bit of rust on it that probably needs to be taken care of, but he really thought you could go out to fiscal year 30. And, you know, so $90,000 in fiscal year 30, maybe that's a little low. But, you know, you're putting in money every year so that you should have that 90,000 when it's time to buy a new bus. So the 45 and the 10 is where we're getting the total transfer to special funds right here, the 55,000.
Yeah, and Lori, I just want to comment. You know, Greg and I have talked. And
okay.
I can't remember the name of the report. That there are probably incidentals that may cut against that 45 or maybe added. But I agree with you know, your overall assessment that we should have an article that really details exactly, you know, where that goes. But the main focus would be that flooring. Yeah, given the asbestos that we know about.
Right. Right. So this is, you know, doing 3 floors, you know, putting the money in, doing the floor in 26 and 28 and 30, you know, and then we have 4 floors in there actually. So maybe we could reduce that. And then, you know, replacing the floor material every so many years as well. This is, you know, doing some painting, and then the UV replacement will need to be done eventually as well. So that's the capital plan that we put together. I think it's, you know, this is a great start. I think it definitely needs to be updated. First of all, updated every year, but also just really looked at from a capital needs assessment standpoint. There's been a couple of reports out from the state for Act 72, they did a capital assessment. Neither Greg or I have had time to really go through those yet, but you know, that's another place that we can pull some information of what needs to be updated in the school.
Is that different from the VisBit inspection that was done?
Yes, that's different than the VisBit one. Yeah.
Is that a more recent document?
It was done, it did come out about 3 weeks ago, I think. It's people are not happy with the cost analysis that they did. They hired a consulting firm to do this, the Agency of Education did. And so we haven't like torn it apart and said, yeah, no, their numbers are really low, or yeah, that looks okay yet. So we haven't had time to do that, but I'm sure Greg will be sharing those out at some point.
Okay, is that across the SU that the feeling is, or is that like just statewide or?
Oh, statewide. Yeah. Statewide. Yep.
Yeah, well, I guess that's.
The one example Greg gave me was that they had a replacement for a door, an exterior door that was like $1,200 as an example. And he said an interior door is going to be around $1,200 or more. So like, it's just, they were just weighing, they were like 50% of what the real cost should be. But I could send that report to you guys tomorrow, just so you have it.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then the state just did, but just recognize the numbers for planning are not super accurate.
No.
But you get a sense of where the systems are, the useful life of each of the systems in the building, and the state calculates that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And this is actually all to inform. I mean, this part of this is the data collection to inform the legislature on the capital needs of all of the buildings in the whole state. So, some good can come out of this eventually for capital improvements and new buildings and things like that. So that's coming.
I think there might be some just cross-referencing from VisBit inspections with that could probably give us a good idea of exactly firming up that capital fund for the building.
Right. So, just to kind of, I don't have the profit and loss I can send it to you, but really I just wanted to talk about, there's been a lot of changes from the fiscal year 24 budget to the, I'm going to stop sharing for a second here. Okay. To the, actuals, what is actually happening. You are definitely running ahead of budget. Right now, you're running about $94,000 ahead of budget for fiscal year 24. I expect, that will be reduced some with, Jen's work that she's doing up there. And then potentially, if you do hire somebody, that would reduce it. But you're probably still looking at a surplus, and I would, it's a little bit hard at this stage with all of the changes, but if I had to be pinned down, I would say, somewhere in the $50,000 range is what you'd be looking at for a surplus at the end of the year. And, when I was talking about how can we fund, some of these capital needs, so this is exactly where you could do this. So, what we were looking at is $55,000, right? So, roughly if you have the $50,000 surplus this year, if you ask the voters to move it into capital, you've met that, right? So you could actually maybe take that out of your budget. The other way to do it is that if you have a surplus, you're supposed to legally give it back to the taxpayers and reduce your tax rate. Right. So that's another way to do it is that we just reduce the ed spending number. Same thing what we did this year, right? We used $30,000 to lower the tax rate. So in essence, you could do the same thing. It is supposed to be audited. I didn't mention that today, Dan. It does need to be an audited surplus. So I would really recommend putting a article on your ballot to move it into to capital building.
Audited by
our auditors, the Wyndham's auditors. So there is a little bit more of a surplus, right? We used 30 of the, I believe it was 90. Let me just grab that number. I thought I had that in there, but I didn't.
So I guess the difference would be either applying it to the budget, driving down the tax rate, or just directly on the tax rate itself, right?
Well, what I mean by that is that you really can't apply it to the tax rate this year for 25 because it's not audited yet. So that's a little different than what I was talking about earlier today. So let me just get in here. I'm almost there. Okay. Right. So you have another $20,000 of fund balance that you could apply to this budget that is audited, right? So we know we're using 30 for fiscal year 24. That's sort of set aside. You have another 21,000 that you could apply to fiscal year 25's budget.
Okay.
Okay.
And so we have a few questions as well from folks. Erin's got her hand raised here, and then there's 2 more people on Zoom. So go ahead, Erin.
Lori, I just want to clarify and I guess just understand. So right now you said for a forecasted budget for this year is what I'm understanding is we're 94,000 above budget year to date. Is that what we're looking at for a forecast?
You're running ahead of budget at this point in time right now, about 94,000.
So $94,000 more than planned. And then
less, Aaron. Sorry.
Now, is that due to the the lessened salary of the teaching principal?
Partially, yes.
Okay, and then what is the forecasted budget for the end of the year, to the end of the year? Because when we've been looking at that as well.
So, Aaron, in our system, we encumber salary and benefits that are current salary and benefits and all of that. So I'm taking all the encumbrances into mind when I talk about the 94,000. But we know that there are going to be more expenses coming your way, with Jen's work, potentially hiring somebody. So that's why I said 50.
Okay, so with that too, so right now we have a credit of 94,000 on the school budget, but has any of Jen's work been added, or Bob's work, because Bob and Jen have been splitting up the time?
So this is my job. So you're not getting
Well,
billed
I didn't
extra.
know if there was a line item to be split on a
No.
percentage, because that would
No, you're not being
make
billed for
sense.
my time. But you will be billed for Jen's time that she's spending here.
Okay, so right now, this $94,000 credit does not include Jen's time.
That's correct. And that's why I'm being conservative and saying 50,000, right? So if we just use a number like 50,000, because there's going to be other things that happen, other things that come in, that's why I was being conservative.
Okay, I just want to understand that more, see where everything ends. So that's 50,000, which could possibly go either way.
It could, yes, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of moving pieces here, and so that's where it's hard. It's not as hard with other districts that are just been running really steady, right? So there's been a lot of variables here. I will do another profit and loss for your next meeting, which will have most of Jen's costs associated with that. And that's partially why I didn't do it today, because I know there's other costs out there that have not been charged to Windham yet.
Gotcha. So, you're going to go calculate all of those and put that in, and that will be seen on the next P&L for next month. So
yes.
We'll just say there's a $50,000 credit. We'll just use that word for this, or a variance. That's probably the correct word right now. I'm a little tired. $50,000 variance on the budget for now, and right now we have a surplus of about $50,000. So that would bring our surplus to zero. Like if we, really look at numbers, so that would be a zero surplus to go forward. So we could possibly be using up, and I'll stress that, possibly be using up our surplus if it swung the other way, because it possibly could with all of the other variances on costs.
I mean, it's possible that you spend the $50,000 that you're, your variance, and then additional money. I think that there's always a possibility of that. I'm just saying at this point in time, what we're looking at is that if the year were to end today, you would have $94,000 in the bank.
But we wouldn't, because we haven't charged off Jen.
Okay. You'd have $50,000 in the bank.
Okay.
But she's not going to cost you that much, I'm telling you. So there are other variables that might happen.
Gotcha.
Lori, speaking of other variables, you mentioned earlier that there was some current year curriculum items that Jen had asked about, and you had held off on that order. That's one of the types of things that you're talking about. Is that?
That's
accurate?
correct. Yes. Yes.
Right.
And as long as the board is good with ordering those, we'll go ahead and get that done, get them in the building.
And looks like Russ, your hand is up again, and then Michael Pelton will be next.
Yeah, my hand was up just for a point of clarification. There are two different auditing firms involved in Windham. One of them audits the town, and that's some residents of the town who are auditors. But then there's a firm out of Maine that auditors the financial statements of the school. And that's the surplus that's generated after the fiscal year ends. In June, they look over all the expenditures, and that money would be available for the following year's credit. You can't anticipate the surplus from this year solving next year's problem. It's the year after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Russ is correct, and I misspoke earlier to Dan. So sorry, Dan. I got all excited because I thought you were going to have a surplus.
Okay, Michael Pelton.
I just wanted clarification on the quote unquote surplus this year. You said something about 27,000. Is that effectively null, or is that an actual surplus for this year?
Yeah, no, 21,000, Michael. And that is, so when I'm looking at your books, and your audit is so close to being done. I wish I had it for tonight, but you'll see it on your next audit. And so it's like 51,000, but we know we're using 30 for fiscal year 24, right? Remember, okay. Everybody remembers that stuff.
So we can call it 20,000, 21,000, right? And then assuming we had a $50,000 surplus, based on the fact that we haven't spent on pension and whatever, would that be a fair assumption to say that the board could conceivably use that money to fund the asbestos abatement this year for the following year?
So you could, so it wouldn't be audited surplus, right? So you couldn't apply it to the tax rate. You could choose just to do your asbestos abatement, and you basically would overspend the budget, right? You could overspend the budget, which would eat into that surplus. So you could do it that way if that's what you wanted to do. If you wanted to get rid of, one classroom, do one classroom next year.
Yeah, I'm not advocating getting rid of the transfer funds to have a building fund. I think that's a great idea, but I'm just thinking if the flooring is such an issue, or potentially is such an issue, perhaps that could be something we could move on relatively quickly, at least start the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the idea about the 45, right? Is that it based on your budget that you put together on those line items, you're accounting for 45 next on FY 25, and then not necessarily on the next preceding years, right?
Well, I was putting in 45 for fiscal year. Correct. You are correct. So the annual contribution goes down, right? So you're sort of front loading your capital plan with this 45,000 so that you had enough in 26 to do that asbestos abatement. But you could deficit spend it, so to speak. It's not really deficit spending it if you have the money in the bank. It's just not recognized money because it hasn't been audited.
Yeah. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm. So that's what I have for you for a budget. I do not have any tax information yet. It's early, it's too early, especially this year with the new Act 127. We know that you lose your small schools grant. Will you pick up enough in the sparsity and in the small schools section of the new weights? Maybe. We're also waiting on December 1st. We're waiting on the yield number. So the yield last year was around 15.4, I think. And this year, it will drop, right? So, but the number of students will go up in the state. So they're working with that right now to figure out what the yield is. Because remember, and I say this for everybody listening, is that the ed fund is one pot of money that every school district pays, or every town, pays into to fund the education for the whole state, right? So if one district is going way up, then, the ed fund has to be able to balance itself. And so that's what they're working with the yield. Your CLA number is going to come back. You were reappraised, so you're probably going to have a higher CLA number than you did last year, which is going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
Part of your tax rate comes from West River, right? Your secondary comes from West River. We're pretty far from having, the budget. I haven't done the first draft even yet for West River. So some of that will come through to Windham. So I'm hoping by next meeting, we'll have a better sense of where this, $153,000 of additional costs how it's going to play into the tax rate.
Can you talk about, you mentioned something about caps, right? I know it's too early to talk tax rates,
Sure.
but past a certain limit, right, there is something to the pot where they evaluate district by district, possibly capping at 5% increase at max?
Right. So there's a couple of different things with Act 127. First, I'll talk about the 10%. So the 10% is your cost per student. If your cost per student goes up more than 10% or more, then you will go into a fiscal review by I think it's business managers, superintendents, and people from the Agency of Education will review your budget. You are definitely.
I would assume that we would hit that, right?
You're going to hit it. Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, you would have to knock out everything plus here to get under that 10%. So. Okay. You're going to go into some sort of review. The other thing that's in place is a 5% cap. So if your tax rate goes up, when we have all the numbers back and we calculate the tax rate and it goes up 7%, you're actually going to be capped at 5%. Now, if you don't pass the review, they say, yes, we understand why your cost per student went up over 10%. You pass, you get to keep that 5% cap. If you don't, then it can go up to whatever the tax rate is, 7%. We'll use that as the scenario. Okay. So those are some things that are put in place. If you don't get the cap the first year, you never get it again. So, the thought process is strategically, oh, well, you want to hit that 5% cap, so you get it the next year, the 5% the next year. but think down the road, right? So this is something that you really need to think about, because at some point that cap is going to go away. And so then your tax rate is going to, increase in 1 year significantly more than 5%, because you've capped it for however many years you cap it, right? So we have to be careful about that. We don't want, if it's a legitimate cap, you're going to get the cap. But you don't want to build up your budget to hit that cap necessarily, right? Because at some point you have to pay the piper, right? The ed fund still needs to be funded. So, those are some things that we're looking at that we'll talk about when we get some better numbers.
And is that a case of, I'm just thinking ahead towards like how we can impact that financial review. Is there any guidance on there, or is that something that we're going to know more, in the next coming months? Or
that's a great question, Dan. It's a great question. They throw this, oh, you're going to be in review, but they don't really give us much. There's a few things that they're going to look at. So one aspect is, you lost your small schools grant. Let's say that's, 5-7% of the 10%, right? Just from losing that because the law changed, right? So they're not going to hold that against you, right? So there really isn't any other guidance besides, that's one thing they're looking at. They'll look at, is it reasonable? Is it a reasonable jump? And, providing all of these items that are on the list here, one being library that you needed to have in your budget, they're not going to quibble about that, right? Because that is an EQS standard that has to be met. So, other than that, I really don't know. They haven't given us a lot of information about that because I don't think they really know exactly yet.
Great. Well, if you know more information on that, if you could pass that along, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
And I see Russ, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Lori, I have a couple of questions I think I'd like to bring to the forefront so that people are aware of how the cost per pupil is calculated. Last year, we projected about 19 students in the school. But this year, if my math is correct, we only have 12 students attending the school, and we have 6 to 7 students that are tuitioning out. And the average daily membership for this year, for the first 20 days of school, will probably be between 12 and 13 students. It continues to decline, and I think that trend is likely to continue into the future. And even if we have waiting for poverty, waiting for rural school, and all the other stuff, we would be hard pressed to have 15 students of equalized pupils to calculate the per pupil cost this year. If we did have 15 students, the per pupil cost would be $39,666. If we had 17 students by a miracle, it'd be $35,000. And in either case, if you're talking property yields anywhere from $11,000 to $15,000, you're talking tax rates between $3.50 and $2.26, depending upon what the property yield is. And I think that the problem is bigger than just simply trying to fund the school with $594,000. I think we need to seriously look at tuitioning students to another school. And if we tuition 20 students at $18,300, that's $366,000 of tuition payments. And then we throw $32,000 into that for transportation to get the middle school and high school kids down to the bottom of the hill. And you've got $398,000 of a school budget. $398,000, let's call that $400,000. That's $194,000 less than what's being proposed. And I find it incredulous that people would sit back and say, oh, gee, it's only $594,000. I mean, let's look at this seriously, and let's get the education for our kids there, but let's not continually hope that someone else is going to pay our bills for us. Thank you.
Well, Russ, and I'd remind that it is a proposed budget, right? So we'll be under review after this. One thing Lori mentioned was the CLA going up. Considering your role as a lister, can you perhaps comment on that?
The CLA issue is a big issue for the reappraisal towns.
I agree.
What has happened in some towns is because they adjusted the CLA from, say, a 70 or an 80 up to 100 or 105, because of the way the formula works, they didn't raise enough money in taxes to actually pay the school budget. So it's a serious dilemma. I'm estimating, based upon using the statistics that they've used in the past, that instead of being in the 70.9 range, we're going to be in the 87 to 92 CLA range for this next year. That's applying the same mathematical process this year as we have in the past 3 years.
So in your estimation, that essentially dividing by that fraction is a multiplier, right?
That's right, but it would mean that you'd multiply the tax rate by 15%. You'd add another 15% to it if it's at 85 or 90.
Well, previously we were looking at 1.4, so another 40% on top, right? Versus a 15% this time?
Well, you can't really say it that way. The way the math works is if the CLA is below 100, you divide the tax rate by the number below 100. So if the tax rate is $1 and you divide it by 90.9, you have $1.10 tax rate. So the CLA less than 100 raises the tax rate. And the quotes that I made here, based upon average daily membership being, or equalized pupils being 15, 17, or 19, puts the tax rate in the mid 250s to the mid 360 numbers. And then you got to divide it by the CLA of less than 1, and that raises it even more. It's
I consider the 40,000 that you're quoting for FY 24, right, is heavily impacted by a higher difference between the market and the discrepancy, right?
No, the per pupil cost is arrived by taking the 594,000.
But I'm talking about at the end of the rate, the school rate, right? It was dramatically affected, right? That 40,000 was dramatically affected by the CLA, which in your estimation is going to go a lot higher, bridging the gap to that 100%, right? And
no.
So even with that,
the CLA is still going to be less than 100.
Well, yes, but now you're talking about the difference between low 70s and higher 80s. Is that correct? And that's a pretty big difference as a multiplier to our tax rate. Isn't that correct?
No, I don't think you're understanding the way the tax rate is calculated.
I'm not talking about the tax rate. I'm talking about the take home, right? And so at the end of the day, the CLA difference that we're seeing from this year, this FY, is going to be completely different, right? At the end of the day for the FY 25. I guess what I'm suggesting is it's a bit apples and oranges, right? Because we're going to see a major difference, right, in how much that is affecting that CLA from your office, right?
No, the CLA is calculated by the state of Vermont. It's not something that we calculate.
Well, that's affected by the appraisals that you do. Is that correct?
Not this year, no.
That you did.
No, not that I did. It's what Nemrick did the appraisals, and they will be effective for the 2024 tax year for the bills that you pay in November 1st of 2024. And the CLA rate that is being calculated, previously it was 70.9. Now it's going to be probably 87 to 90. Somewhere in that range.
It's a smaller multiplier against the higher budget, but it could end up being the same take home at the end of the day, right?
No.
Well, so can I just jump
in? Let Lori.
So no, well, I can see both of your points, but I think a simple way to really look at this is to say, okay, the tax rate was $1.52 last year. And if we take that $1.52 and divide it by the 70.91, we get to the 214. If we take that $1.52 and divide it by the 80 something, you're going to get a lower tax rate. However, what Russ is saying is that the numbers of students have gone down. So therefore,
So
you
it
know,
would raise that, but
so you're going back and forth with numbers, and I think it just makes more sense to wait until we have some actual numbers to see.
I'm just suggesting that the take home, right, would be different, right? Even with the budgetary increase, right? Even with the cost per pupil, because
What do you mean? What do you mean by take home?
It's going to be way different than what we've experienced, the past 2 years, right? In terms of CLA.
What do you mean by take home?
After the tax rate, right? After the costs per pupil, after the yield, right? After the secondary, right? We have our tax rate, and then it's multiplied by, divided by the fraction. So essentially it's been 1.4, right? But you're saying, okay, it's going to be higher 80s, right? And so that's going to be at the end of the day, right? We're not paying the raw tax rate of, the cost per pupil, the yield, and the secondary, right? It's going to be after that CLA adjustment, and that CLA adjustment is going up, which means, essentially less taxes, right? Less impact to what we saw, in FY 24 and 23.
Yes, but the actual tax rate to start with is going to be significantly higher than it was last year, because you only have 12 students in the school, and the equalized pupils will be 12 or 15 based upon factors for poverty and for the rural community adjustment.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to make sure that at the end of the day, right, that the adjustment does, what we see on our tax bill is after that adjustment, which is going up. Is that correct?
Yeah, the tax rate will be significantly higher for 2024.
No, that's not what I asked. The CLA number, that is the adjustment, right, is going to be less impactful to that tax number. Is that correct? Or FY5?
No matter how you cut it, even with the reappraisal of the property in town, the actual education tax rate based upon this budget or one close to this is going to be significantly higher than what it is for this year. You're talking about a 20 or 25, maybe a 30% increase in the education tax.
Well, I mean, based on your CLA number, I mean, that's a way bigger swing than anything we could do on the budgetary standpoint from the school.
Well, I'd be more than willing to meet with you in person, Dan, and explain the formula to you to show you how it's calculated. And it all depends. The big factor is how many kids are in the school. And because we had projected 19 and we only have 12 in the school, and the estimated attendance next year is probably going to be about the same level, you're dividing your school budget by 15 into the budget to get the cost per pupil, which is going to drive the tax rate significantly higher.
And I'm happy to talk about it. I just don't want to lose fact of the CLA number to your own admission is going to be higher.
CLA is one factor.
Yeah.
CLA is one factor in the overall
process
computation. It's one single factor.
Oh, it's a pretty big factor.
So we're going to move on from this part, guys, so Lori can finish up. We got quite a bunch of stuff on the agenda, but I do appreciate how close you guys are looking at those numbers. So thank you.
I'll be more than happy to meet with you and talk about the formulas.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we're factually correct in addressing the public on this.
Yep.
Okay, Lori.
Oh, Lori, you're on mute.
That's all I have for you tonight for the budget. I guess what I need from you is some feedback, right? Do you want to leave the budget as is? I know that, as I said, I budgeted one teacher and a teaching principal. Do you want to look at something different, like 2 teachers and a 0.2 principal, because that is something that was suggested, I did do the numbers on that, and that would reduce the budget by 26,000, almost 27,000, at a 0.2 principal. So there's, I can change this up for the next draft, or we can keep moving forward with this draft.
Yeah, I would be happy to review the budget with you. I think that would be a good idea. Given the changes that we're expecting to see, right, with our staffing, I think that's going to be a pretty big impact. But I think there's more discussion to have. We mentioned the survey, which was predicated on the previous teaching principle, but I think it's still an important piece to this. What are our deadlines as far as revising the budget?
Yeah, so I was going to say, so you're on a pretty tight timeline.
Sure.
We'll have another, you can add more meetings, but the next meeting is in the mid of December and then mid-January. And really by the January meeting, you should have a board approved budget that you're putting forth to the public, because, the town office will need to, do what they need to do to get the annual budget out. It needs to be warned 30 days prior to town meeting day. And we need to have a budget meeting 10 days out from town meeting day. So, all of those things need to happen. And so it's a pretty tight timeline. So I would say by next meeting, which is
the 18th,
that we should, really say, okay, we want to add this, we want to subtract this, we want to get to a bottom number, let it set for a month, and then come back ready to approve it in January.
and there's no revised spend, from there.
After the board approves it, there really is, it's possible, but really there isn't a lot of time to revise it unless you don't vote on town meeting day.
Okay, thank you. Russ?
If
Actually, it's Joyce, Dan. Thank you. I would like to ask, first of all, Lori, I want to apologize in advance before I make the request because I'm asking for more work on your behalf. Based on the questions that came up tonight about Jen McCusick and her impact on the budget, would it be possible when the budget gets represented that we could add columns? I realize the fiscal year 23 is an actual number. The 24 is the budget as it was voted. Before we get to fiscal year 25, could we include the year to date that was spent and what has been encumbered?
Sure, that's not a problem at all. I can, it actually comes out of the report that way. It's just that when I'm doing the budget, there's usually a lag, and so more items have been spent, so it's never really accurate. But I'll do it, like the day before the meeting and send it out, so it'll be the most accurate numbers, up-to-date numbers. But that's not a problem.
Thank you. That's the way I'm used to seeing it. So I just thought I didn't want to add to your work, but it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. If there's no other questions, Lori, I think you're free to go there.
I am. I do have one other quick thing, if I may. It does have to do with the budget, but it also has to do with federal funds. And Rory's helped me a little bit on this, but Windham can no longer accept federal funds because I need some help, and I've reached out to the town multiple times. We need a document that establishes when Windham School started. And I've sent what documents will work, all of that. And I've had no response from anybody but Rory. And I need to get this done, or I can't subgrant you any more ESSER funds. You can't apply for any grants that are federal. So it's important that this gets done, and it does affect the budget in the terms of, I was talking about the REAP funds and all of that, right? So those are federal funds. And we need to get that done. We had to do the same thing for Marlboro. They actually ended up sending me a copy of a page of their deed book as to when the building was deeded to the school district. And that actually, the feds accepted that. So,
Lori, just for clarification, it's the school building, not the original school. Is that what you're saying?
whenever the Windham Town School District was established.
Oh dear.
Not the building, but the school district.
Right, I
The
have some
school district.
1802.
Well, do you have a document, Michael? Because that would make life really good.
I've got the history of the town that's in the archives at the town office, but I don't know if you'd call it an official document.
Well, it'd be.
They should be able to pull a deed. They should be able to pull a deed for when the current building was rebuilt on that property, because that property was gifted to the town.
1963.
So yeah, I'll take.
That was the rebuild, but the donated property was before that.
Okay, I'll take anything at this point and upload it and see if it passes muster, because I emailed on October 9th, and this has been going on for a while. So, and the board's been notified, everybody's been notified.
So Lori, Joyce Cummings speaking. I'm an assistant town clerk. I'll be happy to look into that. We do have some school records in the vault. I think we had a review by someone from the state. He came in and reviewed our vault. And I think he said somewhere around early 2000, there was a change in the law that required not the town to keep the records, but the school or the supervisor union to keep the records. But prior to 2000, and clearly the school is established prior to that, the record should be in the vault. I can do what I can to look for it when I go in this week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it for me then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Have a great rest of your night.
All right,
Thank you
talk
so
to you all
much,
later. Bye-bye.
All right, so moving along in the agenda here, it is Designate SU Board Representative. So
when Beth resigned, she was, as board chair, the designate. There's two designees from Windham. The board chair is a de facto designee, and you need a second one. I don't know who the second one was at that time, but when Dan came on, you guys didn't appoint a new one. So if it wasn't Rory, and Rory doesn't believe it was, then then you need to just vote as a board to appoint either Dan or Rory to be the second voting member of the SU board.
do either one of you prefer?
I'm happy to do that job.
You are?
Sure.
All right, so I'll make a motion to appoint Rory as the SU board representative. Can I get a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, you got it, Rory.
All right. Thanks.
And then the second piece is that the SU has a policy committee. So one of the two voting members of the SU board, which is you both, one of you needs to, or not needs to, but you really should, serve as a policy committee rep for the SU policies. This is not for your own. It's usually the person that does your own, but it doesn't have to be. In this case, if Dan was your policy person, he couldn't serve in this capacity, so happy one of you two. But
I've written lots of policy and stuff before, so I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so I'll make a motion, Abigail Pelton be the SU policy committee rep. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 excellent.
Dan, are you an aye?
I am an aye.
Okay. All right, so that's me. And now we're going to move into the staffing update.
Right, so Jen and I so I mentioned this, I'll just say it again. So the state of Vermont requires that there be a principal designated for each school building. And like with other elements, like I mentioned with the librarian, it has to be it can be prorated if you have under a certain number of students. The number that they gave me was 0.2, which is basically in essence 1 day a week or 2 half days a week or 3 1/4 days a week, however it works out. And so I had to designate somebody in that role. Jen and I had a long conversation about it, and it seemed that given the status of what was happening, that having her be the person made a lot of sense. She's our director of curriculum and instruction as well, so it provided someone to be here who we weren't just checking a box. We were coming in to actually take a look at the curriculum and figure out what was happening instructionally and to do a level of assessment there. So she agreed to that. It's a additional stipended job on top of her full-time job, which means that she can't do this job in the evenings because she has to be here. So it means that other work that she does, she's pushing to evenings and weekends to do her other job. This is not a long-term plan. This is an interim solution to be compliant with the law and to ensure that things are happening the way they're supposed to happen. Originally we talked, and this was earlier, late October, early November, was to try to get through, depending on where things were with the posting and the staffing, to minimally try to get us through the Thanksgiving holiday. We're clearly through that. She's still here. So at this point, we have agreed, she and I have an agreement and understanding that through the end of the December holiday vacation week, that is really the best that the SU can provide her for. So I just want everyone to kind of understand that that's where we're at. It's a temporary solution for the next month, if you will, at this point. Meanwhile, we posted the positions as we described at the last meeting, which was we tried sort of 3 different approaches: a teaching principal to replace as is, and then 2 separate, a teacher and a part-time principal. So those 3 postings. As of today, we have a couple of applicants. We have formed a committee, and I'll come back to the parent meeting in a minute. But we have a committee, and we are actually having some interviews tomorrow afternoon, or evening, late afternoon, early evening. And so that came out of Jen and I. We're getting a lot of questions from parents at that point. Once we identified Jen as the principal of record, she started getting a lot of questions from parents around what was happening curricular-wise and instructional-wise, and some concerns were raised. So she obviously spent some time here and did some analysis, spent some time with the subs, spent some time with Marco, worked with Glory to get some other things sort of up to speed that hadn't been done, and a lot of it was just because Glory was new and didn't know. And so we ended up deciding that having a meeting with the parents to sort of hear some concerns and to give them an update on what was happening curricular-wise was a really important thing. So we did that last week, at the beginning of the week. Dan joined us for that as an observer. I think every child's family was represented in one way or in multiple ways at that meeting, either live here in the multipurpose room or on Zoom. And it was Daniel can speak to, I think, his perception of the meeting, but we got a lot of feedback, and Jen reported out sort of what an early literacy program should look like, and talked a little bit about what was happening with some of the assessment work and assessment data, and some parents had some requests to get some data from some of the assessments that were done and to potentially have another parent conference type situation set up as soon as we knew more information. And so we wanted to pass that along. But I don't know, Daniel, if you do want to share a little bit about your takeaways from the parents' meeting.
Yeah, sure. So, like Bob said, a lot of work was done by Jen, and I super appreciate Jen putting in the effort. Essentially, she did a gap analysis of our current curriculum. Particularly, there are spots here and there, but particularly what she found was major parts of K-3 English were underprepared. So she did and is working currently to get in replacements, fill it in either with new orders or in a lot of cases, she is being cost conscious on it. So she is looking at say duplicates from other districts and supervisor union. And another part that was brought up was on thoughts on teachers. So kind of the current state of where we're at that Bob mentioned with our applicants, possibly splitting the roles to appoint 2 principal with an English teacher based on, and the point 2 would be based on classroom size requirements. One thing that we definitely heard was, and I would agree with this, is no band-aids. So meaning continued temps and continued substitutes that are leading to a lot of issues within the school. Bob kind of clarified a lot of how this process would work if we expected, say, a January start following that deadline with Jen. So it probably lasts somewhere, from these interviews that we established, somewhere between 1 to 3 weeks, depending on how it shakes out. The other part is, we did talk to parents and invited them to be a part of the interview process. So we really want them to provide direct feedback and questions to the candidates. And additionally, we wanted at least 1 school member, which I nominated myself to attend as well, to be observer. And I think in particular, given the curriculum gaps, I think, a lot of attention needs to be put onto assessments going forward for remediation plans based on what Jen was saying, and make sure that kids are on track, or if they're not on track, that we work towards getting them on track. The other part, they kind of express their overall needs for a new teacher. They're looking for long-term, so going back to the Band-Aid, less subs, more year over year, multiple year commitment, not necessarily, but having the long view in mind, right, for the school. And yeah, that's what I got.
And the other, additionally, I should have mentioned earlier with the literacy piece is that one additional expense that the district is going to pick up is Jen has arranged for a couple other teachers, AST teachers, academic support teachers in the SU to provide lesson plans for our sub. So there are some structured literacy lesson plans being developed by people outside the district and providing them for our sub, which provides obviously significantly more structure, and gives that person the ability to kind of really use as much of the curriculum that's being done in the rest of the district as possible, the rest of the SU as possible. And so that's another expense because obviously those people have to be paid to do that piece, and Lori had mentioned that, but that's part of the Jen expenses, I'm sure she was referencing. And then the only other thing I would say is that there was concern raised about behavior. I think there was some conversations around, I don't want to undersell, I see Bridget has her hand up, but that there was maybe a little bit more handsy type behavior than we've been accustomed to in the past. And so there's a certain level of rough play, let's call it, that might be age appropriate, but that what the parents were expressing, and I think what Jen had seen as well, is that with the amount of change and with the lack of consistency, that kids will test the boundaries, and then so behavior was becoming more concerning. Jen has shared some resources with the sub and with Marco to kind of set some common expectations that maybe hadn't been in place this year, and maybe hadn't been in place with consistency for a little bit, even before this fall. But yeah, I think the idea of the loss of what kids have had with other staff members who have left last spring, and then the end of the year, and then new people, and then one of them leaving, and so just a lot. And just that they were expressing that the kids have been through a lot, and that we really shouldn't be, as we seek that replacement. As Dan said, the parents are not satisfied with us considering a Band-Aid. They're looking for like a solution. So a high bar for excellence around what that candidate would potentially have. So I don't know if that covers it. If other parents wanted to mention anything as well, but that's sort of what we heard, and Dan did a nice job of recapping that.
Yeah, Bridget, did you have anything to add?
I do, and I appreciate the time that you took to be there, Dan. And I think you asked a lot of really great questions. And Bob, I appreciate your summary of it. I think one thing that was really really stood out to me, because both Dan and Bob, you are newer to Windham. I think Bob's getting his miles in with the past like 6 months with us, but I've never sat in a I've sat in a lot of meetings that have a lot of divide. I've never sat in a meeting around Windham and the school that had a universal message, and it was how unhappy everyone was. And that doesn't mean that anyone came in like yelling and screaming, but I wish the whole board could have been there, and it would have been hard for you to do it because of open meeting laws and things like that. But it was really interesting I've been through this so many times, and I've had pros and cons myself. I've never seen such a universal message of how unhappy families are. And I really want to make sure that you guys are not taking that lightly. It doesn't mean that everyone was walking in saying, close the school. I'm not speaking for other people in that way, but it was a very strong message. Some of us felt stronger, some of us felt soft, but it was very universal that families are very unhappy with how this has gone. And I think there's a lot of support being lost, and that concept of not having a Band-Aid, please don't take that lightly. I think the concept of how long this is going, also, when we get into staffing and tuition requests and all that and what the plan is, I'm hoping we're not waiting until December. I mean, it's December 1st on Friday. I think Bob did a really great job of summarizing some of the concerns that were expressed. Parents are really struggling, and I think the kids are really struggling, and that there needs to be serious thought put into that.
I appreciate that, Bridget. I mean, it's something that I tried to at least express by the end of the meeting, but I do take it to heart. It definitely goes into my thought process as a board member. So I do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Bridget. Crystal, I see your hands raised.
So I want to say this, and it's hard for me to say this because I always feel like I have a great relationship with Bob. I really like Bob. And I always feel like, I'm kind of coming after him. But for myself,
hold on, Crystal.
for myself, I really hope you guys kind of think about these tuition requests, because my child that I moved to Townsend was already educationally compromised from the previous year, where I had asked for extra help, and I said, let's collaborate. Let's get this kid help. He didn't get help. He got taught to play poker. I begged for special ed assessments. That didn't happen until Bridget took over. And then it was, well, we can't assess him because Windham didn't do any intervention. Intervention that I started asking for in January 2022, that I have email proof that I started asking for help in January 2022. And I think my lucky stars that Jimmy and I went with our gut, even though Bob and Jenna approached us and told us that Jackson would be safe, healthy, get a great education with her there. I thank God we went with our gut, because I already have a kid that is educationally compromised. He now has a plan in place at a different school. and he is becoming a good student. I can't imagine where we would be at if I would have put him in Windham to hear that a curriculum is just getting started. So please keep those things in mind, that you have students that are already educationally compromised from previous staff that did not help.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay.
And so the last, I just wanted to bring it back to the staffing side of it. So we have a sub operating right now in your building. And the state is very clear that you can't have an unlicensed person in a licensed position for more than 30 consecutive days. So the last day is December 6th of the 30th consecutive day. And so that's just another factor for you guys to be considered. We can request an extension on that from the AOE. They may or may not grant that. We won't know until we do. So if you want to direct me to do that, that's something you probably will want to do at today's meeting. Because we'll need to know the answer before.
Since there's a lot of variables, especially with hiring, it sounds like that's also in the pipeline. But just to be kind of more on the err on the side of caution. With the sub having previously had licensure to teach, is there any way to get that temporarily so that at least the sub is licensed until we can get the staff in?
Yeah, I mean, we if the person's willing, we can go through the provisional application process with that person and get them provisionally licensed.
And then the hiring contract would, or however it could be as soon as somebody's hired, then it's done deal or something, or I don't know.
Yeah. So I would say we're going to know a lot more tomorrow. We have the interviews tomorrow, and so that will probably give us a lot more information about what does that mean. Although, as Dan and I have talked a little bit, it's not there's no guarantees there because you have to agree, you have to have terms, you know what I mean? There's a lot of variables even from background checks and all of it that we know that can disrupt the process that might look like it's going to be smooth. So yes, the timing is going to be really essential. We don't know how it's going to play out. I just want you guys to be aware of that deadline. There's a potential to request it to be longer. We don't already control whether or not they approve it. If they don't approve it, I don't know what that means. I guess it means we'd be out of compliance at some point. But that's something that I want you to be aware of and be fully transparent about.
I'm not sure, how Jan and Rory feel, but I think it's worthy to at least reach out to them to see.
Yeah, if you're going to be conducting interviews and we only have until the 6th, then it doesn't hurt to ask for an extension. That way we can make sure that these people that you're going to be interviewing aren't a good fit.
Yeah.
So,
and if it takes 2 weeks to onboard somebody that's a fantastic fit, then, we need that little bit of extra time if they're willing to give it to us.
Well, that's why that January time, I think it was Dan that referenced that, is probably a realistic timeline when you think about onboarding, and
especially with the holiday.
Maybe they have to give notice somewhere else. Like we don't know what their circumstances are either. And that's a best case scenario that you find someone that meets that high standard that we talked about earlier. So there's a lot of elements that are
they all interviewing or both interviewing or however tomorrow?
We have 2 interviews tomorrow.
And we've had the same substitute, so there has been consistency with the students with that. So I think if there were ways to kind of explore that option, if anything, to continue with the consistency until there is a change versus having to flip-flop. I think that would be, as we mentioned, the behaviors with the students escalating, don't want to continue down that path. Yep. So anything we can do to reduce that, I'm in favor of. So
Bob, should we motion for you to reach out and see if either a provisional or an extension, given the circumstances of our interviews and the kind of the process we're going down?
Yeah, I think if that's how you want to direct me, then I would do that as a motion.
I would like to motion that. Should I?
So your motion is to direct me to request an extension on a 30-day limit for unlicensed staff from the AOE.
Yeah, either that or if a provisional license can be extended, given the circumstances that we're going through interview and we're looking for staff.
And that person's willing to stick along, so that, like I said, it would create that consistency. So it might help families know that, that person had licensure before, which I think it was like 2020 is when they decided not to renew it or something. So that might be a potential avenue just while the hiring process is getting worked out to keep things consistent.
So which
one?
What are you directing me to do?
So Daniel, what are your thoughts? I mean, I think
why not both, right?
Okay, so
There be an objection to that?
Want us to redo a motion there to include both there for you?
At least to explore both options.
Explore both options and see what we can come up with. Okay. So moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Lori, second. Any discussion?
Do have a hand up in the audience.
Bridget.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So thank you, Bob.
Bridget's got her hand.
Bridget can.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that this is literally a Band-Aid that we just asked you not to do. We're at a point that we're 30 days in and we're asking to extend a sub because we don't have a clear solution. So I understand why you're doing it, but it's really disappointing that we're asking families to accept that as our education. We haven't been getting it. We're backtracking. We're really far behind. And at the first junction, we're saying, let's see if we can extend this sub. So that's part one. This is the Band-Aid stuff we're talking about. Part two of what I want to say is if the interviews are tomorrow and time is of the essence, can the board and Bob commit to meeting on Friday? And Bob, this would be sort of a, do you think you can do it in time? If you have interviews tomorrow, can you reference check Thursday? Can you guys meet Friday to decide if there's a candidate or not? Because it's December 1st. And I think that you either need to decide on these candidates or come up with a different plan for us.
So, a board can do a special meeting whenever they choose to do that. But I will also, I'll say a couple things. One, I'm not working Friday afternoon, so I'm done at noon on Friday. So that's one piece. Headed to the Celtics game. But the second part of that is if we're hiring, just so people understand procedurally, if you're hiring a teacher, a principal hires a teacher and makes a recommendation to a board to hire. We don't have a principal. So if we're hiring a teacher, then in essence, it's Jen / me making a recommendation to the board to make a hire based on the committee's recommendation, if you will. If we're hiring a teaching principal, then it's a similar process because it's recommending a principal. That would be more me than the me / Jen. So the process would be if I guess what I'm trying to get at, I think maybe is that Friday is probably not enough of a turnaround time to be able to make a recommendation around hire. It might be enough time to do an update on where we are in a process. And in an open meeting, we wouldn't be able to talk about the candidates specifically. I'd have to re-look at the executive session warnings, I guess, staffing, contracts could be, yes, I guess we do something in executive session and talk about that if we had a candidate we wanted to process that possible appointment. Although the appointment will be made in public session. So I get to answer your question. I think it's possible, but I think especially because it would have to be Friday morning, it might be too tight. We're doing this Wednesday afternoon, evening, which really just gives Thursday. I want, based on not being a Band-Aid, based on past experiences, I want to ensure that the background checks are really thorough. I don't want to jump into anything and I understand the turnaround time, and I get that concern, but I want to make sure we do it right. And so Friday might be too soon, but we could do a special meeting at the beginning of the week for sure as well. So if that's something you guys want to talk about and see where the committee lies. I mean, I can also be in touch with the board after the committee, deliberates following the interviews to kind of give you guys like we have a lead or we don't have a lead or we have two leads or you know what I mean, just to give you guys a sense of what the tea leaves might look like.
When do you think would be the earliest for a recommendation, Bob? Like just officially the background checks you've gotten,
I mean, a lot of it depends on people getting back to you on background checks. I mean, it's a school. Doing it in the summer is hard. People are on vacation and stuff, but right now that's not as much of an issue. So it's about getting a hold of people, getting people to call you back. So I mean, less than a week would be normal, I would think. Depending on whatever other, there might be licensure things to talk about. Like I don't know, we don't really know what the implications would be. So I just don't want to commit to a particular day right now, but certainly by the beginning, Tuesday-ish, Monday, Tuesday, maybe. I mean, that's kind of
like
the
4th,
window
5th.
I would expect. Yeah.
I have a question. Is there about licensing? Is a retired educator license valid for anything, or is that considered unlicensed?
No, if you have a retired license, it's a valid license.
Does Sally not fill in here anymore?
I
don't know.
I don't know the status of.
I know that she was. I just don't know how often or.
Erin, you have a question?
Yep. So you said there was a committee.
Yep.
For the hiring. Who's on the committee?
So we have myself, Jen, and Michelle Harchie, who's assistant special educator, assistant director of special ed for the SU. It's getting late. Daniel from the board. And there are 3 parents who are on it. And I took basically, in essence, the first 3 and only 3 that could do it, that wanted to do it. I have Michael Pelton, I have Bridget Corby, and I have Alexis. I'm going to mispronounce her last name, so I'm not going to try it, but you know who I'm talking about.
Okay.
So those are my 3 parents who are serving with Daniel and the 3 of us from the SU office.
All right, so with that, since my child is technically a Windham student because he is enrolled and paid for by Windham, why wasn't my family included in this?
So we had a meeting with families of current students here at the school.
Mm-hmm.
That's the meeting we had.
But so still this, for a committee to hire someone for now and hopefully previously.
Well, so part of the challenge of the hopefully part we go and allow is that what we're really doing is we're filling, it's a long-term interim position that we're filing. We can't do a contract for more than beyond the end of the school year. So we're really, and I hesitate to use the word Band-Aid, but we're really filling a position for the rest of this school year. And then in the spring, we can make a decision about whether we choose to repost or reappoint at that time. But it's not technically a long-term position. It's a through the end of this year position for now.
All right. So with that,
so that's why we went with internal people only who had kids here, which makes sense.
Do understand that, but at the same time, it's like my child is a Windham student because that's what they are. They go in power school or whatever, and they're listed as Windham. But with that, from the feedback that I have heard personally from this meeting that I found out afterwards that was happening, that people were not happy with the substitute teacher. So to, again, once put a Band-Aid on a situation that people have come forth and talked publicly about to you, and you're not denying it, and yes, I heard it third hand, but I do also know this person, and I know that a lot of students and parents are not happy with the substitute teacher. So with that, to extend or add or whatever to put a Band-Aid on it, I don't think that's right, and I don't think that you guys are listening to what the parents are saying that have current students in the school. So I think you need to listen to that more.
Thank you, Erin. Joyce?
Thank you. I have to kind of take it up where Erin left off in terms of listening. Originally, I was going to bring it up as a point of order. You had a motion on the floor that then offered in terms of an extension of a license or a provisional license. You brought it to a vote before asking for public comment. So Bridget's comments, Erin's comments, they're all after the fact. You already made your decision. What is the point in asking for people to speak on a motion if you've already voted on it? You should ask for any public comments. They have to put the motion out there. But then
Public comments are not required for a vote.
it may not be required, but it is absolutely allowable. And in a situation like this,
It is allowable, but it's not a point of order.
It's inappropriate.
speaking to point of order, Michael, you are not a board member. I waited until I was recognized. You did not.
Why don't we
Okay,
just
point of order.
call it? We are now 2.5 hours into this meeting. I don't think anybody's in the right place to be yelling. And thank you, Joyce. I appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you.
Bridget?
So I actually have to go because I got to go put my kids to bed. So before I go, I hear you, Bob. I put too quick of a timeline on that next step, but I hope the point is out there that I'm asking the board to not wait until the next regular meeting, that there's a sense of urgency on whatever the candidates are, and maybe you can set something a little bit more specific. And then earlier when we talked about tuition requests, someone referenced whether you'd read them. I do want you guys to acknowledge the tuition request tonight, even though I have to go, but I just ask that you not read it publicly. I think that the board has had an exchange back and forth and understands where my family is, but like my kids' names and things like that are in there. And so I'm just, before I log off, I just ask that that's not read publicly.
No problem. You got it, Bridget.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for all of
you.
your input.
Yeah, and that said, I mean, as soon as we get a recommendation, I would recommend, me personally would recommend that we have a special meeting to discuss and go through that, and then talk about our options. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, so we're rescheduling a special meeting. Were we going to do that? Is that what we were looking at? Or are we
Let's get the feedback from Bob, and then we'll go from there, and then
okay.
And then post the meeting.
Yeah,
So-
I would hold off until after the sessions and see where we're at, and maybe we can have some communication on Thursday and see where we're at.
Perfect. Okay. So
But
you'll know
what-
probably pretty.
What Crystal's saying is representative of what the parents are saying in the meeting. They want action soon. So.
I lost my first page. Really?
Joyce, did you have another comment? You're on mute.
We're both fighting with a mouse to get to the microphone here. It's just a point of order. Board members can talk to each other without being recognized by the chair. And members of the public, including Michael Pelton, need to wait until they're recognized by the chair. I recognized until someone said, okay, Russ, you had a question, and I would talk. But there are people that just throw words out in the middle of the meeting, and they're not recognized by the chair. And I think we need to go back to the Robert's Rules of Order and let the chair run the meeting. And people just can't blate out, you did a great job, or you did a lousy job, or whatever. You need to wait until the chair recognizes you. I think that's the proper way to run the meeting, and these meetings are absolute chaos. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay. So have we kind of finished up with the staffing update? We can move along. So strategic planning. So in these binders which is going to segue into the policy stuff, off of the VSBA website, they have, once I get through all the Robert's rules in here, engage the community and establish the vision, which is something that we were trying to do with all of the assessments or emails to go through surveys. That's what I'm trying to get the word for. And so we're going to continue to keep this on the agenda and continue to talk about those things, whether for the long-term planning. So that'll involve the community engagement and vision, and we also have these little like self-assessments within the binder so that the board can go through and really see where we need work on that area or areas and move forward. And then we'll be able to keep the copies and everything tangible of what was adopted and what policies we're taking on. So that's kind of all I wanted to really add to that, is that, so the community is aware that we have kind of extra documentation to help kind of cross-check that we are not only following the policies, but that we're meeting everything within the appropriate timeline. And on that, I wanted to ask Bob, in the I don't know what, October, you had sent the recommended policies that were already adopted and the other thing to us. Some of the stuff that was recommended, I noticed were not on this list, and so I was just wondering, is that something we're going to get to down the road, or
So again, some of those are recommended.
so that were recommended on, I don't know if you remember that one that you had sent out.
Have it open.
So looking through these, the first box, for
So you're
others.
looking at the under B.
Under B, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, yep. So those are policies that the VSBA recommends. As I mentioned, you guys have one, and so those are worthy of conversation for sure, and figuring out where you guys want to have those. And if you go down to the bottom of the document, what my recommendation was that we start with the ones that are required that need updating first.
Perfect.
So this is kind of step one,
Yep.
what you're looking at today.
Yes.
Step two would be exactly what you're looking at, one of the recommended ones to see, because you don't have to, but they recommend.
So it'd be worth looking into, yeah.
They're worth talking about. And so, yeah, you'd want to get to that part next. So the part I'm starting you off with today, the reason there's a whole list, is really more about the legal compliance piece and updating those that you had legally comply with the law, but the policies, the recommended ones, the required ones have changed since you guys adopted them. This is to get you up to date and current with all legally required policies.
Beautiful.
And minus one, which I want to talk about when you let me, but that's what that is. So
Okay.
but the rest of them would be like step two, maybe the winter, maybe after you get a budget, then maybe the spring, you're doing some recommended stuff. Get yourself on a timeline to look at a couple of every meeting and figure out what you want.
That's perfect.
Yep.
I like it. Go team. So I guess the first policy to be worn, A1, board member conflict of interest.
Yeah, so let me just give you a summary first, then you guys can decide how you want to approach them. From A1 down to C7, well, technically C10, are policies that you already had under different names, because the numbering system changed a number of years ago. And those are the ones I just referenced, that those policies have been updated by the VSBA based on new legislation or whatever recommendations they have. So they've put forward through their legal team new versions of those. That's what these are. These are not new to you policies, but they're updated policies that replace existing ones that you have.
Right.
Okay?
So we could do
You could do a motion with all of them. You could do a motion for all of them anyways, as a slate if you choose to, but that's what that group is. C10, I'm giving you it's not a different policy, it's the same policy, but because this one's an unusual one, C10 is the prevention of harassment, hazing, and bullying. And in that policy, the recommendation is to list the names of your employees who are C1 designated employees to report bullying and harassment to. Those people that are listed in your policy aren't here anymore. And so what I did with this draft, I think if you look at it, I basically just listed titles rather than names. like the principal
Yeah.
will be one of the, you know what I mean? So that way,
When it
you don't
is
have to change every time staff leaves. So that's really an update, but that policy is exactly as the one we
Yep.
already have, it's just updating it there. And then the bottom six, well, yeah, the bottom six are ones that you did not have but need under legal requirements, C13 and down. And the only exception that I'm not going to recommend that you do yet, because it's not ready, is E1. And this is an example of possibly where the goal setting part that you're talking about could be useful. If you open this policy and you look at it, there are a variety of places where you're supposed to set some goals and some procedures around how you want to engage with the community. And the assumption is that you're writing that before you adopt. And so, yeah, we're out of compliance, but to adopt one that doesn't have anything in it is
Right.
kind of pointless too.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna set that one aside until you guys have time to kind of look at that in more detail.
Is that all the highlighted?
So that was
Right, anything that's highlighted
E1,
needs to be, and that's
And-
E1, yep.
and the other one,
But the others, C13, 14, 15, F1 and F2 are all ones that are legally required and you do not currently
Right.
have at all. So those will be brand new to you.
So those we have to do
Yeah.
first.
So just to remind you guys, so this is a two-step process for adopting policy. You warn it first, which is basically in essence what this is. If you don't modify anything, then you can come back and adopt it at the next meeting. And if you want to modify any of these, then we would modify it, and then that one would bring back for a warning again, then adopt it 2 months away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you need 2 months with the same thing on the record to get it adopted.
okay.
So that's your process. You can adopt as a group, or not adopt as a group. You can warn them collectively as a group. In fact, I'm not even sure you need action at this point. They've been warned. You can discuss, you can do whatever.
So I don't know how you guys, I've looked at all of those. I'm comfortable, like I'm okay with going through and saying that we, adopt them,
I don't
but
think we can though. I think part of the process is, right, we have to warn it and then
Yeah, you
Right,
adopt it
so
next month.
we
yeah.
can't adopt yet just because of that.
right, but I wasn't sure, if I was to say, list off the ones to make the decision for next month to adopt. Are you guys comfortable with that? Because I feel they're all pretty,
Well, through C10, it sounds like there's not a lot of changes. E1 needs work, and the others are mandatory, so
so
we should assume the only one, E1, I don't know.
Yeah, I would just
Leave
pull
that
off
one
for now.
out.
That's why I put it in
Yeah.
italics so you could see
Yeah.
that it's part of the list, but it's not ready for prime time.
okay, so I'm gonna motion for the following policies, to be warned. A1, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B7, C4, C5, C7, C10, C13, C14, C15, F1, and F2. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, any discussion? Well, Michael
and
Pelton?
Ross or Joyce.
I have a question regarding policies in general, but go ahead and finish this.
Okay. So,
Russ.
Russ, do you have any discussion on this?
Sorry to confuse you, but it's Joyce again.
Sorry, Joyce.
Simple question. Where can these policies be found? Are they online somewhere that the public can review them?
Yes.
Do they have all this? You have this? Because if
I'm
you
trying to
click,
figure out how these were shared. These were shared they were set up as links in the agenda.
yeah,
So if you have the agenda, they're hot
Yeah,
links,
you
so
can
you could just click on it, it'll bring you to the actual document.
it's very handy.
But once you guys warn them, I think we put them on your website with them marked as warned.
Yeah.
So it will appear on the SU website under Windham School Board for next time. So after tonight, Sue will load that up tomorrow and get them with the warned date on there so you can all see them.
But they won't be clickable links for somebody who wants to read it.
No, right now the clickable links if you have the agenda, but the other ones you have to actually go onto the website and see them.
Yes, and so that's what I had done. I had actually, before I saw
Yeah,
this today, so I went and dug through them.
Does that
And it seems
work,
fine.
Joyce? Are you able to do that with a clickable link or no?
That does. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so got a motion on the table and no further discussion. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 No,
Okay, so those policies will be warned for the next meeting. Moving on to the tuition requests.
Michael had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael Pelton, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick policy question. Given the let's say challenges, the recent challenges, I'm wondering if there is cause to revisit. I don't know what the policy would be, to be honest with you, but whether it's a curriculum or internet policy, what would cover the access to the internet that was apparently used in video was shown? Like, whatever that needs to be looked at and readjusted, because clearly something went awry and that shouldn't have happened. That's my comment.
I agree with that.
That's a great comment, Michael.
I get my response to that would be is I don't know if there's a policy that covers. There are elements of, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this, professional conduct that are statutory for teachers to follow and administrators to follow that would govern conduct like that outside of there being a policy.
But if students have access to a computer, then it should be limited somehow. Because if the teacher could look up something on YouTube, then
there are under our so late in the day.
Your IT
COPPA,
department.
I want to say, is that the Internet Protection Law? Does that sound familiar to anybody?
I think you're right.
Look, from my perspective, all I know is that like last year, or whether maybe it was the year before, Crystal actually would be the one who knows more about it. But like apparently there was something called Roblox or something like that, which I have no clue what is, but I probably should. But like the kids had access to this thing that they shouldn't have had, and it was on the internet. That's all I know. And now we have a teacher that apparently had access to internet stuff that apparently that shouldn't be on there. So whatever policy governs internet access and what is provided to the kids should be like, hello, only G-rated stuff with no like weird, creepy stuff allowed. That's my PG version policy recommendation.
I appreciate that, what you're saying. I think the kids accessing information is there are firewalls and protections on the kids when they log in with their devices through the firewall that's set up by the IT department for internet coming into the building. Some things, and I don't, Roblox sounds like some kind of a game or something, that sometimes sneak through these things from time to time because it takes time to update those walls, and particularly more at the secondary level, kids figure out ways to get around them. In this situation, well, I won't say anything about this situation. What I'll say is there are some websites.
Privacy.
There are some websites that are not blocked universally by IT because of potential for educational use that could be misused. Right. Is that a fair way of saying that? Okay. So, but those things, you could expand the protections to ensure those things aren't accessible within your building, but then you're potentially blocking the use for academic use.
Or maybe they have to enter a password or something.
Right. So, yeah. So, but I think I hear what you're saying, Michael. I appreciate where you're coming from on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Crystal.
Joyce. Go ahead, Crystal.
So, yes, Michael is correct. It was Roblox. It's a game that's for 14-year-old kids. But my point is most of our policies are put in place to kind of keep the kids from doing things. If an adult in the building is bringing this kind of garbage into the building, they probably shouldn't be working there. And I wasn't even going to touch on the video, but again, very thankful, went with my gut, because you guys are very lucky my child wasn't exposed to that.
Okay, Joyce, do you have another, is your hand still raised or?
Yes, thank you. Two comments again, in response to Michael Pelton. Number one, yes, it is. I don't know how you'd regulate this by a policy. It's professional conduct. You hire someone who's supposed to be a professional. You shouldn't even contemplate that sort of teaching, shall we call it. Secondly, once again, the superintendent, Bob Tebow, was speaking and you interrupted him again without being recognized. It's getting frustrating, to say the least. Thank you.
Are you referring to Michael Pelton in that case? Just to be clear.
I am referring to Michael Pelton. Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Okay. So not seeing anything more on the policies here.
I have my hand up, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Erin, go ahead.
So with these policies, as I've seen these come through for, I don't know, 11 years now, since I've been attending school board meetings, they don't really like follow up on it, like what we've brought questions. So what happens like here, we're gonna talk about code C15, which is the Student Conduct and Discipline Act. So we just talked about, or I'm sorry, I didn't talk about, you guys talked about kids being handsy and having fights. And I've heard other things from other parents that still have children in the school where there's actual physical altercations. But I do believe something like this already exists, you know, a similar one.
Correct.
But so this continues to happen, which was the same problem where I used to get death threats from my child when she was in school here, but nothing happened. So you put these policies into place. What happens? So you got, you know, two kids out on the playground punching each other. What do you guys do? You got also 48 days of missed school. What do you guys do? Because that happened to me. You know, child missed 48 days of school and there was no truancy. Your policy is 10 days. When does that ever happen? What is
I can't speak to Windham because I've only been involved a few months this year, but what I can say is that it's the responsibility of the board to ensure that the superintendent is enforcing policies with the principal and the principal does it with the staff. There's a chain of command around policy enforcement. That's what it looks like. The discipline policy states that there's a system of classroom and school management practices set up to be clear and fair around discipline procedures. And its policy states what the purpose of it is for, environment, where the expectations for student behavior are clearly stated, understood, and accepted. So yeah, the policy doesn't say what the behavior system is.
Yeah, it says set up by.
It says set up, right. So,
yep.
so a lot of policies are more like the 30,000 foot level where you establish like this is something we believe as a board, well, we're required to by law to believe this, that this is the way it's supposed to be, now take care of this. Mm-hmm. And so then it falls on in a school, the principal, to ensure that those things are in place.
So I have a thought.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
You know, it just does seem redundant that this, like, number one, there's no principal, like there's an acting principal, and this doesn't happen. And this has been going on for weeks. And especially this policy that does exist under a different name.
Just a different, something different.
But nothing is happening for it.
I can't speak to that. I'd have to talk to John to see what discipline is, what's happened. I don't know off the top of my head on that one.
But you bring up a good point, and I have a thought. I don't know if this is crazy or not, but so these policies are put in place, right? They're supposed to keep our kids safe, and they serve a purpose. But if they're not being utilized or they're not being enforced, then it's mute,
I mean, it's
right?
kind of like you just kind of do this to them all because why?
Right. So, and I think it probably would work to have people who have students in the school part of this, but if there was like some kind of review committee, or if there was somebody to say, like, you've a kid in the school, or if anybody who has a kid in the school now or had one in the past, they understand, if your kid comes home with something, or if
I mean,
another
my
parent says,
stepdaughter was allowed to miss 48 days of school in this school. 48 days of school in this school. The truancy officer was never called. The current substitute teacher said, please don't call. So with these policies in place, I don't see how we can run a healthy school. And especially, again, this substitute teacher, you know, when you have these issues and you have these policies and those issues are also happening with this current substitute teacher, you understand that I'm also talking for these other parents that have children in the school right now.
Well,
it's
and
not just about, you know, my kid who may
I'm
be
not saying you
attending here next year.
specifically. I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just saying because
I understand.
You brought it up and it's a good point.
Yeah.
And if you're
But a lot of people don't understand that. And you get it, and I understand that you get it, so
but
I thank
I'm
you.
trying to bring up like a solution that maybe would be good for the school, good for parents, assuming that we have a school with.
So I understand, and I thank you for that, and I think board communication is number one.
But board doesn't really communicate with the teachers on things like that are happening. But if a
Maybe,
parent,
you know, you're also supposed to enforce the policies that are put in place.
But how are we supposed to know if there's an issue?
Maybe you should just talk to them.
Periodic reviews.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we can have a committee that does that.
Talk to the parents about, you know, their feelings on these things. Anytime I used to talk in the past when those issues were going on, I've been ignored. So those
Well,
are
I'm trying to
still
listen,
no, and I think that's great. But you, as a board, I think you need to communicate with the parents more, whether surveys, and the teachers more with surveys, and send them out and collaboratively and communicate for parents and students to understand what's going on. So when you come to these meetings and you set policies, you have a better idea and how to go forward.
Okay. But I'm still offering that as a solution. Maybe somebody's interested, if anybody's interested in something like that in the next couple weeks when we have a better idea of what's going on. If there are people that are passionate about,
and I get that, but I think that comes from communication from you guys as a board out to the current parents in the school.
Partially, yes. But there's, you know, it's the parents, the teachers, and the board. It's not just the board and the
Be the
teachers.
hero of this game.
And that's why I'm asking if
So
you'd
that's
be
what I'm
interested
saying.
in
Do
the
it.
committee.
I'm saying do it.
No, I asked you if you would be interested.
No.
Or if any other parent would be interested.
I am not interested.
Okay. Okay. Moving
So
on.
I'm telling you, you should do it. You should start it. Maybe send out a survey monkey, and say who would be interested.
Well,
that is
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to this, you know, I think it was a good step that we had, you know, a parent talk between the acting principal, the superintendent, a board member, you know, with current parents, and maybe that's something that can be replicated past this, right? That could help with, you know, policy enforcement, or at least understanding where the gaps are happening, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that might serve as a good model, and yeah, I mean, I do think, I think, you know, Rory brings up good points, and so does Aaron, and that, you know, we have the need here for something, right? And we do have something positive that came from parents meeting. Maybe we could replicate that in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Aaron. Crystal, is your hand up?
Yeah. I mean, I think a committee is a fine idea, but the bottom line is as we all know, we can't talk about particular students. I think it comes down to making sure the staff that's in the building is dealing with issues that are fighting and missing school and those kinds of things. You know, dealing with the student, dealing with the parents, and then generally they deal with the students and the parents. And then when they're not getting anywhere, they reach out to the superintendent. The superintendent gets involved. As far as I know, and Bob could correct me if I'm wrong, the only time the board gets involved is if it's an expulsion issue.
I mean, you're right from you know, how, yeah, that, I mean, that's correct from how, you know, what the definition of what the board does, right? In terms of budget, in terms of vision. it tends to be the principal. I guess what we're suggesting here is that there could be a collaboration similar to what we had recently between the principal, the SU, the parents, and at least one member of the board, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
from my perspective, what I would
I
say
don't
is that I think that the essence of all of this is around leadership, right? This is around having the right person in the right position to effectively run a school that has clearly a divided town, a history of trouble, people with a lot of feelings about a lot of things that happen to them, their kids, etc. This isn't just a this fall issue. Clearly, this is a longer term thing, and the way to fix that, or the way to begin fixing that, is by having a top-notch leader. That's where you start to solve that problem, because a good leader will bring people together from the current students, the community members, board members, central office folk. They will bring people together. That's what you guys are looking for. We talked about that bar.
Let's hope you hit it.
That's what you need. That's what you need, and that will solve a lot of the challenges I think that Aaron's talking about, that Crystal's talking about, and even that Michael was referencing earlier. Like a good leader will ensure that good stuff happens in their school. Can't always stop all the crazy as a principal, but you can set the tone for what the place is like.
Yeah.
And that's the principal's job. So that just 2 cents for me. Sorry.
Thanks, Bob.
Joyce, is that your hand up?
Yes, very quickly. To Bob's comment, I really appreciate the idea of that sort of approach. But what do we do when parents' concerns are not acknowledged? I mean, they haven't been acknowledged by the board. Now we're saying put the right person in the principal position and let that person lead. The board isn't acknowledging it. In the past, the administrator, the principal of the school hasn't acknowledged it. How do we get past that?
Yeah, I mean, all I could respond to that is just say that the parents who have brought concerns to me about things that are happening in the building have been dealt with by me. And so, that's the best I can do in that situation. But yes, if you're not satisfied with how the principal does it, it's the superintendent. If you're not satisfied with how the superintendent does it, it's the board. If you're not satisfied with how the board does it, you elect new board members. These are people you guys chose. So that's how it works. That's how school systems in Vermont operate. It seems abrupt, but I mean that's how it works.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I understand the principal's role and the need for a strong leader, but I think a school of our size, we could stand to have a true collaboration, or at least a sync up, at certain points. So it's not just on one person, right? And we're getting feedback, to each other directly, especially parents currently at the school. So I guess in a way, I appreciate a strong principal, but if we're looking for a hero, it's not just one person, right? It's all of us, right? Especially the people that are directly involved with the school. And I think that would serve as a better model, than just strictly, I'm disagreeing respectfully, Bob, that, just following the chain of command, right? Like, I think we could stand to hear each other more often.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. No further questions. We've moved through the what policies to be warned, so we are now on to tuition requests. No, we did not warn an executive session for that.
I have a thought, but I don't know. Given that you're interviewing tomorrow, we're waiting on your recommendation or not, and we're expecting to have some sort of meeting early next week, can we table this until then, so that we have an idea what is going on. I think that makes sense. Otherwise, everything we're doing is kind of for naught. No.
Well, I think that they were pretty clear that they wanted some acknowledgement.
But we can read who wants to be publicly acknowledged, but for a decision.
So one of the things we can do to start, I think, will be at first acknowledging the folks. So we can go through with the names of the people who had sent the request. So Emily Forbes, Bridget Corby, Aaron Kehoe, and Bridget Blanchard.
And then there was the fifth one.
And Crystal.
And Crystal Corby. So
we're not reading Bridget Corby, so
no, and I'm not going to be reading out the people's requests. So they were requests for tuition. Now with the understanding of what the concerns that the parents are highlighting here, kind of what we've been talking about in the meeting today is that things are being planned and it's not that things are not being provided. So I'm not sure how, Dan and Rory, if we want to motion through these, what your guys' thoughts are. I'm not going to be reading them for people. If somebody would like to read their own, I think that that's fine. But I don't want to get into mentioning or not mentioning names. And she said she definitely did not want hers read. So, Erin, do you want to read yours?
Oh, sure. That's fine.
Do you have it or do you want a copy of it?
It's on my phone somewhere. All right.
That's allowed.
Sorry, I have to use the restroom.
No problem. So on November 13th, I emailed the school board. Actually, Bob, I thought I emailed everybody, but it only took Bob. Bob then forwarded to everyone, and I apologized to the whole board, saying I thought I had CC'd everyone. I said, to the Windham School Board, I am requesting tuition for Nora Kehoe, that is my daughter, for the Mountain School in Windham. I'm requesting this on the basis of the lack of an equitable education offered to the students of Windham Elementary School. There is no licensed teacher available in Windham. Curriculum has not been implemented until the termination of a teaching principal, and it is still being questioned. Full required curriculum by the state of Vermont is not implemented. An unhealthy and inappropriate atmosphere is in the school, social emotional health, lack of services, lack of after-school activities, and the school is running on substitutes. We had previously asked for this for fear of occurrences like these happening. Please consider this request.
Okay, thank you. Bridget Blanchard, are you still on? I got hers up next.
She is.
Did you want to read yours or?
You can read it if you want. I don't have it right in front of me.
No, I'm not doing the reading of tuition requests. That's if you would like to have it read into record, you may read it. Otherwise, I'll acknowledge that we received a request from you.
Yeah, give me a second. Oh, okay. Is there a reason why you won't read it?
There's things with names. I'm not going to get hemmed up in trying to say something. So yeah, if you want it read into record, you're more than welcome to do so.
Oh, okay, it's a reading thing. It's hard to read. Okay. Makes sense.
Right. Saying she doesn't want to say your
I get it. No, I know.
She could redact.
I get it. She doesn't want to read it.
It's your details. That's really the issue at the end. So
okay. Just the previous board chair read it. I just didn't know the difference. Good morning, Windham School Board and Bob Tebow. We are awaiting an update on the status of the school. There are a number of concerning factors that we are aware of. For the past 2 weeks, the new principal has been on administrative leave. As of yesterday, she has been fired. She has been quoted that curriculum hasn't begun because they were waiting for supplies. Last year, after teaching principal Mickey Parker Jennings left, and the school was in disarray, students were playing inappropriate games in schools such as Roblox. During the last 2 meetings, parents voiced their concerns about the safety of their children playing games with open chat options like this in school. It was my understanding that this issue would be resolved by the next school year. Almost 2 months into school and no school Parental controls have been installed on the students' Chromebooks, resulting in severely inappropriate music videos being watched during school. One of the videos shows a woman being tied up, kidnapped, and people being killed with gruesome deaths. How in the world is this acceptable? Windham Elementary is proving to be an unsafe environment. These are the very concerns we as parents were worried about, and is why we opted to pay tuition for our children to attend school in Windham. We are requesting the board approve tuition be paid to the Mountain School in Windham for Jocelyn and Bo Blanchard. Thank you, Bridget and Andrew Blanchard.
Okay, thank you, Bridget.
You betcha.
And Emily, is she on?
I do not see her on the list.
Could be bedtime.
Let's see her.
So yeah, it's getting to be witching hour here for most folks with the kiddos. So Emily also had sent in tuition to have her student tuitioned. And Crystal, you're on. Do you have your email? Would you like to read it?
So no, I don't need to read it. It's the same as usual. But I am going to say that to table this is quite disheartening, because when we put the requests in during the summer, we put them based in and said, please don't just hire anybody. You guys hired Jenna Kramer. Now she's not there. And now we're being told, well, we're going to table them for a couple weeks because we might hire somebody else.
No, a couple days. They're interviewing tomorrow.
Right, but they're not going to make a decision in a couple days. I just want to point out that our requests were denied earlier because Jenna was going to be wonderful. She's wonderful. And now you're in a situation where you don't have staff. And now we're being told to wait and see if you hire staff.
So when it comes to tuitioning, the consideration that needs to be met is geographic consideration. And so that is the one thing that with these requests that have been received, no one has met that geographic consideration. The concerns that are shared are not necessarily accurate, but it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that parents can't be valid in their feelings.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the child endangerment piece is pretty big.
Yes, Erin?
This is probably for, Bob, but I'm pretty sure tuitioning can also be done if an equitable education is not met, and we ask the school board to do that. And the school board has the authority, whether it is geographical or not, to approve that. So it's not just on the geographical.
No, but
there are guidelines specifically for geographical, where if I needed to drive by Floodbrook before getting to Windham, that would make sense, and that would be a geographical, consideration. But there's also other things when you read into the statute further. So you cannot say it is only geographical.
No, it's not that it's only geographical.
We can only tuition people out on geographical.
I guess the argument of whether or not what is presented is not equitable, because if we weren't able to be providing stuff, the school wouldn't be able to function. So the fact that it is functioning.
So with equitable, we don't offer everything that we're supposed to offer in Windham by the AOE. So that's not equitable. Just gonna say that, and you can take that however you want.
Okay.
But everything that is supposed to be offered legally for an equitable education is not offered in Windham.
Okay. Joyce, is your hand up?
It is. Originally, I was going to just mention the fact that you named 4 families, and yet there were 5 tuition requests. You mentioned Corby, Goyette, Blanchard, Corvo, but then you recognized Erin Kehoe, so I figured out all by myself who number 5 was. So extra cookies for me, but back to Erin's comments and your comments about an equitable education based on geographical versus this, that, the other thing. And it has to be an equitable education. So if the school district, I worked in a school district for 20 years in Connecticut. So if the local school district cannot provide an adequate and equitable education for a child, the child should be tuitioned out to whether it's an out of placement, an in placement, out of district, what have you. The whole point is to provide an adequate and equitable education to every student, not just those who want to be here in Windham because it's a small school. It's local. I don't have to drive them to the bus stop. I don't have to do this, that, the other thing. It has to be an adequate and equitable education. And that's basically the bottom line. And these parents have, I believe, advocated for their children long and hard. And
definitely.
I don't have children myself, so I am just frustrated on behalf of them for the struggle that they're going through and the fact that the board doesn't even hear them when the state mandates an adequate and equitable education, and the local board just ignores it. I just don't get that.
Oh, it's not being ignored, Joyce. It's being talked about right now. So what I'm saying is yes, we have some challenges, but what the school has and what the kids are doing day to day is meeting that criteria. So that's, the other piece, if it was not meeting that criteria, yes, you also then have to look at geographic consideration. So I'm hearing what the parents are writing in these emails as concerns, but some of what is mentioned is not necessarily accurate with what's going on. Which clearly there's more behind the scenes that is not public that we're working on. But as far as the tuitions go, these were all families that had requested tuition prior to the school year starting and have reapplied for various reasons, citing clearly, inequities. So I don't know what the board feels if you guys want to have an executive session regarding this.
I don't want to have any executive session.
I know,
to be quite honest.
I
I think we deserve a break or something.
This is Bill Casey. I don't know how to put my hand up, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I would like to say a couple of minutes or a couple of sentences if I could. Earlier on, you were talking about the school board listening to the parents. You are not listening to the parents now. They are asking help to get to a better school. You're talking in next year's budget of putting little Band-Aids in with a librarian, with an art teacher or whatever. Next year, they're not now. These children in this town deserve the best education they can get. And you, Abigail, are a stumbling block, completely, totally stonewalling these people. I say you should vote tonight, give them tuition if they want it, and be done with it. That's what the kids deserve.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So I make a motion to, for the requests from the Corbys, the Forbes, the Blanchards, the Kehoes, and the Corviews, given to deny tuition. Can I get a second on that motion?
Are we not gonna discuss it after we?
Well, you can make the motion, we can still have discussion. We're down, we got a motion on the table. Please, quiet down.
I abstain from this vote. I'd like to do the vote after we have a recommendation.
Yeah, I agree. I would prefer to not vote to deny them at this time until after we have more information based on
I can respect that. So, when would be a date? Because I feel that people need to have an answer. And if we are looking at there's interviews tomorrow,
Bob, check his
what's the best turnaround time to have another meeting to address this?
All right. So my world, not that it all depends on my world, but Monday, Tuesday, I'm actually at a joint VSBA and business managers conference. And so I am not in district. It doesn't mean I couldn't jump into a Zoom situation and jump out of the conference for something, because that's the only thing on my calendar. In theory, I'm open all those days during the day. Monday night, I have a Zoom board meeting for River Valleys, and Tuesday night, I have board meeting for Stratton, which I'll be doing on Zoom. Wednesday, afternoon, I could pull off something. Wednesday evening, I have a West River Budget Committee. So Monday, Tuesday during the day is probably my best opening. It would involve me jumping out of a conference, but I could manage that. I would defer. I'm trying to balance the realistic nature of like doing reference checks and being reasonable, knowing that I'm not going to be here for half a day on Friday, with the urgency that I'm hearing.
So what about Wednesday?
But I was going to say Tuesday. If Tuesday would work for folks, I feel like that gives me at least a couple of work days after the interviews to kind of get some stuff done, knowing that I have a full schedule anyways, but I'll do my best. And then it gives a definite answer to have like an update of what's happening, which may or may not lead to more conversation about requests. If that's what I'm hearing you suggest.
Tuesday is fine for me.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
What about the Eddie?
Let's do Tuesday.
Okay.
So do you guys want to set a time now, or do you want to?
So clearly we're not going to motion for a vote at this point, because it sounds as though that's
We
really
want a
the
second,
idea.
right.
We really want to set something to make sure we can give every opportunity for that to be a best informed decision, right? So yes, Michael Pelton, does your hand raise there?
Yes, it is. Just for clarity, it seems like these tuition requests are revolving around a larger question in terms of what the plan is moving forward, and in terms of whether we're going to have a teacher or teaching principal and so forth and so on. So and I think I'm sort of hearing that from Bob. My thought is to make it clear to the public that the tuition requests and some sort of open comment to the public regarding, the potential viability of the applicants and so forth, and therefore the plan of the school would be available at that same time.
And that sounds like what Bob was trying to kind of line up as soon as reasonably possible. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, so it sounds, if I'm jumping onto what Michael's saying, so the idea that we're going to have a staffing update, and if that staffing update leads to a place where we're now talking about the school, then these broader requests that are happening from folks would be rolled into a broader conversation in the school.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing Michael say. So it makes sense to me so jumping on the next part of what he's saying is we're warning that special meeting to potentially do two things.
Right.
To hear a staffing update and, if necessary, have a discussion / decision about tuitioning students in some broader sense.
Correct. That's my understanding.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Also my understanding. Yes.
Okay. So you're not going to connect on a warning language just to make sure we're on the same page on that, but in a Zoom only meeting and doing it on Tuesday at some point. I don't know what time of day is better for you guys, but I think that gives people
Something to keep your eyes open for.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not. It doesn't meet the request of people who want it done now.
Right.
But it gives us a deadline that we're going to have some further answer at that point based on what tomorrow looks like and where we go from there.
Okay.
So that's what I'm hearing anyways.
Anytime after 10 a.m.
Can I make another request?
Absolutely.
My other request would be that the individual cases be discussed in an executive session, and the determination of each individual case is brought out in public forum, so that each parent or each parents know exactly where they stand, and that way the board can look at each individual particular case, because I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that the parents have different reasons and so forth. So I think it would be important for the board to look at different particular cases individually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, Michael.
Yes, Joyce?
Yeah, I appreciate the superintendent's comment about a staffing update at the next meeting and then going on to discussion regarding tuitioning, which makes sense, except it really seems like a repeat of what we've already been through. So you have a staffing update, you find a candidate. First of all, again, having worked in the school district, finding a candidate in the middle of the year is not easy, number one, and the candidate you're going to get, shall we say, is less than par, because you sign a contract back in the spring for a position and you're committed to that position. So I mean, I don't know how you're, first of all, gonna find a candidate now, but God bless you if you do. And again, if you find a candidate, such as the last one, that, you know, may have had potential to be, you know, gotten licensure in Vermont, this, that, the other thing, you base the tuition request on the fact that, well, we now have this teaching principle. Well, look what happened to the last one. So why are these parents going to have to wait? I mean, you're basically wasting an entire year of a child's education looking for the right candidate. I mean, that's what it comes down to, because the kids are not getting an education. So you're going to wait and, you know, let's do these interviews, let's do this, let's do that. And then we'll have a discussion regarding tuitioning. And at that point, you'll say, well, we have, you know, a principal, we have a candidate, we have this, we have that. And there's no guarantee anything's going to work out. And I get it. There are no guarantees in life. But when it comes to your kids and education, I think there should be more forethought into it. I would say allow the tuition requests, if that's what they want, now. And if the principal, the candidate you come up with, you know, turns out to be such a wonderful idea, hey, you reap the benefits because you get more students back into the district that will count into your equalized pupil count. So it could be a win-win. But in the meantime, you're basically putting kids' education at risk, is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Okay. Moving along. So We are now into the executive session piece of this. So it's Tuesday is the
Before you
date.
do that, do you want to set a time on Tuesday? Do you guys have a time that you jointly know is going to be open, or?
Before 4 would be ideal for me.
Or 3 for me, because
So between 10 and 3.
10 and 3 window.
Yeah. What time is good for you?
Well, let me look at what the.
This is the 5th?
Conference. Yeah, Tuesday, yeah. Let me look at what the conference schedule looks like and then see which might work best for me.
Okay, so that's tentatively set for now, or are we comfortable with that?
Somewhere in that 10 to 3 window with a staffing update, possible action, and tuition, I'll just call it tuition requests,
Okay,
possible action, I mean, if necessary or whatever, okay.
thank you,
Yeah.
Bob. All right, so I have that tagged in there. Okay, so we're now down to, I'm gonna make a motion for the board to enter executive session under Title I, Section 313 of the Vermont statutes for after making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage, 313A, 1, C, and E. Can I get a second?
Can I get more information about this executive session? Specifically, it doesn't involve any staffing updates or doesn't involve anything pertinent to like the curriculum?
No. No, that would be
Okay.
stuff that we would talk about in open session.
Okay, in that case, I abstain from entering executive session.
Okay.
Abigail?
Yes, Joyce.
I believe the specific reason for entering into executive session should be part of the motion. There are 6 or 7 categories, and I believe Bob Thibault can explain those to you. They're pretty specific about the reasons you can go into executive session. And while not mentioning any specific names or cases, I do believe it is appropriate to mention the reason for going into executive session.
So in 313, right, for executive sessions.
It's very broad.
Yep, it is. So A is contract, so it's just under 1. C is arbitration or mediation. And E is pending or probable civil litigation or prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party.
So are you saying it's C, it's civil?
It is listed on the agenda, 313A, 1, C, and E. So it is under A, 1, C, and E, as listed in the Vermont statutes.
So you're just not going to put it in the motion specifically?
No, it is in the motion. It states it right there. So, yep. So I have an abstain, and where are you on the executive? Is everybody just too spent?
I think maybe we can reword the warning. I don't know.
Okay.
We're gonna meet again on Tuesday
So then we would add, would you guys want to be adding
if we need to. Again, I agree with you. I don't really know the specifics, but it could also be that I am spent.
Right.
And I'm sorry for that.
Well, that's kind of like what you discuss in the executive session, and this would not have action coming out of.
So you're saying
This
is
is
that you go into executive
informational.
session to discuss arbitration or mediation and to discuss whatever the second one was.
Pending or probable civil
Civil
litigation or prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party.
So what she's saying is she's motioning to go into executive session to talk about those 2 separate things and that there's no action coming out, you're saying?
Correct.
So that's what
Yeah,
she's
it's just an opportunity to talk about the stuff we can't talk about in public.
Can we do it on Tuesday?
If you want to do it on Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to go home and cook dinner.
Yeah.
At 9:30 at night.
Okay, well, since we're
I'm going to add that same thing back on the Tuesdays
please,
as
that
well.
would be great. And then, so with that, I have lost my, oh no, right here. No, page 2. Well, it is, I don't have the rocket science for that one. 2126, or 9:26, I move to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Daniel said aye with his finger.
Okay, well, that means the meeting is adjourned. So
Wave, bye-bye.
thank you very much.
Bye.